So hey guys, this is your favorite fictional vortex. So in this video, we will see what if Naruto was the god of the sun, destined to marry the moon god. SSES Naruto x Artemis x Diana Mythology DC Comics. But before we start, remember to subscribe and like this video. Now let's start. Chapter 1. Solar Inheritance. The desert heat shimmered across the excavation site, distorting the air above sand-colored stones that had witnessed millennia pass in silent vigil. Helios Uzumaki wiped sweat from his brow, leaving a streak of dust acr. Oss tanned skin as he knelt beside the partially unearthed chamber entrance. Unlike his colleagues who wilted in the punishing Syrian sun, he found something oddly invigorating about the scorching rays beating down upon his shoulders. The temperature had driven most of the team to seek refuge in the shade of canvas tents, leaving him alone with the whispers of ancient history. "You're going to dehydrate if you keep this up," called Drive Sarutobi from the relative comfort of the command tent. The older man waved a canteen meaningfully. "Even you have limits, Uzumaki." Helios grinned, white teeth flashing against sun-bronzed skin. "Just another hour, Professor. I'm close to something. I can feel it." The sensation had haunted him all morning, an inexplicable pull drawing him toward this particular section of the ruins. The University of Tokyo's archaeological expedition had spent 3 weeks carefully documenting the suspected temple complex, but this chamber had only been discovered yesterday after a minor sandstorm revealed its entrance. Something about the worn hieroglyphs flanking the doorway made his fingertips tingle when he traced their contours. Sarutobi sighed with the resignation of a mentor who recognized the futility of arguing with his most brilliant and stubborn research assistant. 1 hour. Then I'm sending Yamanaka to drag you back by those ridiculous blonde spikes you call hair. Helios chuckled, pushing a wayward strand of said hair from azure eyes that had earned him as much attention from fellow researchers as his academic credentials. At 27, he'd already published groundbreaking papers on ancient sun worship practices spanning 3 continents, earning him this coveted position despite whispers of favoritism due to his youth and unconventional theories. The narrow passage beckoned as he clicked on his headlamp and squeezed between sandstone blocks. The air grew noticeably cooler as he descended, carrying the musty scent of earth undisturbed for centuries. His boots disturbed fine dust with each step, creating ghostly swirls in the beam of light. "What secrets are you hiding?" he murmured, more to himself than the silent stones. The passage widened abruptly into a chamber roughly 10 meters across. His light caught glints of gold embedded in the walls, not precious metal, but some manner of reflective material set in complex patterns. With practiced movements, he unfolded his portable work light and set it on a stable surface, illuminating the space properly. "Holy!" The words died in his throat. The chamber walls bore no conventional hieroglyphs or pictographs, but an intricate cosmic map rendered in materials that shouldn't have existed in ancient times. Constellations formed from what appeared to be crystal and obsidian stretched across the ceiling, while the walls depicted planetary alignments with mathematical precision that wouldn't be matched until the Renaissance. At the center stood a stone dais supporting a circular tablet approximately half a meter in diameter. Unlike the rest of the chamber's elaborate decorations, the tablet appeared almost crude, a simple disk of some dark stone with a single spiral pattern carved into its face. Protocol demanded he document everything before touching artifacts, but the tablet called to him with an intensity that overrode professional training. Helios approached slowly, camera forgotten at his side, fingers outstretched toward the spiral pattern that seemed to pulse with an inner light invisible to conventional perception. The moment his fingertips brushed the stone's surface, white-hot pain lanced through his skull. The chamber disappeared in a blinding flash that tore a startled cry from his throat. Visions cascaded through his consciousness, a golden chariot racing across the sky. Massive temples erected in his honor, civilizations rising and falling beneath his watchful gaze, and always the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth as stars collapsed and reformed around him. "Who dares disturb the seal of Helios?" The voice resonated not through his ears but directly within his mind, ancient and powerful beyond comprehension. Before he could form a coherent response, awareness slammed back into his body. He found himself sprawled across the chamber floor, gasping for breath, the tablet clutched against his chest. How long he'd been unconscious, he couldn't tell. But the work light continued its steady illumination. Helios struggled to his feet, his entire body thrumming with unfamiliar energy. The tablet felt unnaturally warm against his skin, the spiral pattern now glowing with gentle golden light that pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. Something fundamental had changed within him, knowledge hovering just beyond conscious reach. Power coiled beneath his skin like a slumbering beast. "I need to get this back to camp," he muttered, securing the tablet in his pack with trembling hands. The earth chose that moment to shudder violently. Dust and small stones rained from the ceiling as Helios braced himself against the wall. Earthquake. The region wasn't known for significant seismic activity. The tremor subsided momentarily, then returned with greater intensity. Not natural, he realized as the quality of light in the chamber shifted subtly, darkening despite his still functioning equipment. Something was coming. The temperature plummeted abruptly, his breath fogging in suddenly frigid air. Shadows deepened in the corners of the room, moving against the laws of physics to pool like liquid darkness on the floor. Helios backed toward the exit passage, instinctively clutching his pack tighter against his body. From the writhing darkness emerged figures that defied rational explanation, humanoid in basic shape B. Wrong in ways that sent primal fear shooting through his veins. Their bodies appeared composed of shadow-given substance, edges constantly shifting and reforming. Where faces should have been, only voids existed, somehow darker than the material composing the rest of their forms. "The Harbinger awakens," hissed a voice that existed only in his mind. The tablet must be reclaimed. 5 shadow figures advanced slowly, spreading to cut off his escape. Despite the overwhelming wrongness of their existence, Helios felt his initial panic receding, replaced by a calm certainty that he'd faced such creatures before. Knowledge crystallized in his mind. These were void wraiths, cosmic parasites that fed on divine energy and feared the light. Light. The realization struck him with perfect clarity. These creatures feared what slumbered within him. Rather than retreat, Helios stepped forward, dropping his pack behind him while keeping the tablet secure. Something ancient stirred within his chest, responding to the threat with rising power. "You want the tablet." His voice emerged steady, resonating with unexpected authority. "Come and take it." The wraiths hesitated, their formless bodies rippling with what might have been uncertainty. Then, as one, they lunged. Helios raised his hand on instinct, and golden light erupted from his palm, not the artificial illumination of his equipment, but pure solar essence that seared through the chamber. The nearest wraith disintegrated with a shriek that existed beyond conventional sound. The others recoiled, their shadow forms smoking where the light touched them. Exhilaration flooded his system as knowledge locked within his DNA awakened. Each movement felt choreographed by ancient muscle memory as he wove between their attacks, gold and light trailing from his fingertips like solar flares. 2 more wraiths dissolved under his assault, their darkness consuming itself in golden flame. The remaining wraiths retreated toward the far wall, preparing to merge into the shadows. Helios thrust both hands forward, channeling newly discovered power with surprising precision. Solar energy erupted in a focused beam that caught the creatures mid-escape, reducing them to wisps of rapidly dissipating darkness. Silence returned to the chamber. Helios stared at his hands in wonder as the golden glow faded, leaving ordinary flesh behind. The enormity of what had just occurred threatened to overwhelm him until disciplined scientific curiosity reasserted itself. He had experienced something impossible, yet undeniably real. The archaeologue East in him demanded documentation and analysis. He retrieved his pack with the tablet inside, then carefully photographed the chamber from every angle before beginning his ascent to the surface. Tions cascaded through his mind with each step. What were those creatures? How had he summoned that light? What was this tablet that they had sought so desperately? Most importantly, why did it all feel so hauntingly familiar? Sunlight struck his face as he emerged from the passage, momentarily blinding him after the darkness below. When his vision cleared, he found chaos at the excavation site. Equipment lay scattered across the sand, tents collapsed or torn from their moorings, and team members huddled in frightened clusters around the periphery. Helios. Sarutobi rushed toward him, relief evident in his weathered features. "Thank the gods you're alive." Something attacked the camp, shadows that moved like living things. 3 security personnel are injured, and where are they now? Helios interrupted. Scanning the horizon. Gone. They appeared from nowhere, ransacked the artifact storage, then vanished when they couldn't find whatever they were looking for. The professor's eyes narrowed suspiciously. You don't seem surprised. Helios considered lying, then discarded the notion. Sarutobi deserved better. They attacked me too, in the chamber. They were after this. He partially unzipped his pack, revealing the edge of the tablet. What in heaven's name? Sarutobi reached toward it, then jerked his hand back as if burned. Something's not right about that artifact, Uzumaki. I can't explain it, but it feels alive, Helios finished. I know. Before the conversation could continue, the distinctive thrum of helicopter rotors cut through the air. Both men too. RNED to watch a sleek black aircraft approaching from the east, bearing no obvious identification or markings. We're not scheduled for supply drops until next week, Sarutobi muttered. And that's definitely not university equipment. The helicopter circled once before setting down beyond the camp perimeter, sending swirls of sand dancing across the excavation site. The side door slid open to R.E.veal a woman whose presence commanded attention even at a distance. She moved with preternatural grace across the uneven terrain, raven black hair pulled back in a practical braid that emphasized sharply defined features. Unlike the expedition team in their practical field gear, she wore what appeared to be tactical attire, fitted black pants and jacket with subtle armor panels, suggesting both authority and readiness for conflict. A silver circular emblem gleamed at her throat, catching sunlight with unusual brilliance. Something about her triggered the same strange recognition he'd felt toward the shadow creatures. Though in an entirely different context. Where they had inspired instinctive revulsion, this woman evoked a sense of complementary opposition, like encountering the night after a lifetime in daylight. Professor Sarutobi, she extended a hand formally when she reached them. Diana Prince, the Myskaron Cultural Heritage Foundation. We've been monitoring unusual energy signatures in this region for several weeks. Quote, Sarutobi accepted the handshake with visible confusion. I'm not familiar with your organization, Ms. Prince. Our permits are exclusively through the Syrian Antiquities Department and the University of Tokyo. We operate under special dispensation from several international bodies. She produced documentation that looked impressively official, though Leos noted she never quite allowed Sarutobi to examine it closely. Our interest is primarily in ensuring certain artifacts remain properly secured. Her gaze shifted to Helios, dark eyes assessing him with unsettling intensity. You've found something, haven't you? The question bypassed social niceties with laser precision. Helios felt the tablet grow warm against his back through the pack material, responding to her presence. I don't believe we've been introduced, he replied evenly. A smile ghosted across her lips, appreciation rather than humor. Diana Prince. And your Helios Uzumaki, whose papers on solar deity worship patterns across Mesopotamian and Mediterranean cultures have raised quite a few eyebrows in certain circles. Scholarly circles, I assumed. Among others. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. You were attacked by shadow entities less than 30 minutes ago. You defended yourself using abilities you didn't know you possessed until today. And you're currently carrying an artifact of immense power that's beginning to awaken after millennia of dormancy. Helios maintained an outwardly calm expression despite the shock of her accurate assessment. That's quite a claim, Ms. Prince. Not a claim, an observation. Her eyes flicked meaningfully toward his pack. The tablet you're carrying belongs to a collection of divine artifacts my organization safeguards. Its activation has cosmic implications you're only beginning to understand. And I'm supposed to simply hand it over to someone who appeared via unmarked helicopter minutes after an attack by impossible creatures. Diana's posture shifted subtly, the movement suggesting both combat readiness and resigned patience. If I meant you harm, Helios Uzumaki, I wouldn't have announced myself so openly. The entities that attacked you will return with reinforcements. When they do, you'll need allies who understand what you're becoming. And what exactly am I becoming? The question aped before he could consider its implications. Her expression softened momentarily. The same thing you've always been, though you don't remember it yet. The cycle turns again as it must. She glanced skyward. The sun reclaims its harbinger. A distant rumble interrupted further conversation as dark clouds materialized on the horizon, a meteorological impossibility in the clear desert sky of moments before. Diana's expression hardened as she tracked the unnatural formation. They're returning sooner than I anticipated. We need to leave immediately. Now wait just a minute, Sarutobi interjected. You can't simply. The professor's protest died as the clouds accelerated toward the excavation site, moving against prevailing winds with clear purpose. The temperature plummeted as shadow tendrils extended from the approaching mass. Your team needs to evacuate, Diana stated flatly. Those without connection to the divine have no place in what comes next. She turned to Helios. You have a choice to make quickly. Come with me and learn what you are, or face them unprepared and risk losing more than just the tablet. Helios glanced between his mentor and this mysterious woman. Professor Sarutobi, get everyone to the transport vehicles. Head for Damascus and contact the university. He handed over his research journal but kept the pack containing the tablet. Everything I documented in the chamber is there. If I don't return, understanding dawned in the older man's eyes. Don't do anything foolish, Uzumaki. Your career has only just begun. That's what I'm afraid of, Helios replied with a wry smile. He turned back to Diana. I'll come with you, but the tablet stays with me until I have answers. She nodded once. Acceptable terms. Now run. They sprinted toward the helicopter as the unnatural storm accelerated. Wind howled across the excavation site, powerful enough to send research equipment tumbling across sand. Behind them, the expedition team scrambled toward their vehicles with admirable efficiency. The pilot, a red-headed woman with a stern expression, had the rotors already spinning when they reached the aircraft. Diana practically threw Helios into the cabin before leaping in behind him with inhuman agility. Artemis will not be pleased, the pilot remarked cryptically as they lifted off. Artemis is never pleased, Diana countered, securing herself beside Helios. Extraction successful, Barbara, get us to the nexus point. The helicopter banked sharply eastward, accelerating with greater speed than its frame suggested possible. Helios gripped his seat as G-forces pushed him backward, watching through the window as the shadow storm engulfed the excavation site below. They'll be safe, Diana assured him, correctly interpreting his concern. The void entities want only the divine artifacts and those connected to them. Your colleagues are merely inconvenient witnesses. That's not particularly reassuring. Helios tightened his grip on the pack containing the tablet. What exactly are those things? Void wraiths. Fragments of primordial entropy that gain sentience through consuming divine essence. She studied his face carefully. You recognized them, didn't you? Some part of you remembered how to fight them. He couldn't deny the truth of her observation. The combat had felt natural despite its impossibility. Sklee memory executing movements he'd never trained for. Who are you really? He asked instead of answering directly. A complex emotion flickered across her features, something between amusement and ancient sadness. I am Diana of Themyscira, daughter of Hippolyta, champion of the Amazons. In some pantheons, I am known as an aspect of the lunar divine. Under normal circumstances, Helios would Avenue dismissed such a claim as delusional. But after dissolving shadow creatures with light summoned from his bare hands, his definition of impossible had undergone significant revision. You're claiming to be an actual goddess. From Greek mythology. I claim nothing. I simply am. Her gaze intensified. Just as you are the returning aspect of Helios, god of the sun, reborn once more as the cycle demands. The declaration should have sounded absurd. Instead, it resonated with disquieting familiarity, like a forgotten melody suddenly remembered. His protest faltered as fragmented. Visions from his contact with the tablet resurfaced. Golden chariots, adoring worshippers, celestial journeys across the vault of heaven. Impossible. Is it? How did you destroy those wraiths? Chi-Power answered your call in that moment of need. She gestured toward his hands. Divine essence cannot be permanently destroyed, only transformed and reborn. The greatest gods and goddesses return when needed, though they often begin each cycle without memory of their true nature. The helicopter banked again, following the contours of mountains that had appeared on the horizon with suspicious speed. Either they were traveling much faster than seemed possible, or geography itself was bending around their journey. If what you're saying is true, Helios said carefully, why now? Why me? The cosmic convergence approaches, a celestial alignment that occurs once every 7 millennia. During this alignment, the barriers between realms thin, allowing passage between worlds typically separated. Diana's expression grew grave. It is also when the Void Collective is strongest, when they seek to unmake creation itself. And this tablet is important because it is one of 12 divine ciphers scattered across realms to prevent any single entity from wielding complete cosmic authority. Together, they form the key to either sealing or releasing primordial forces beyond comprehension. She nodded toward his pack. That particular cipher responds only to solar essence, your essence, whether you accept your divinity or not. Helios fell silent, processing information that systematically dismantled his understanding of reality. If even half of what she claimed proved true, the implications extended far beyond archaeological curiosity. The landscape below had changed dramatically. Lush forests replacing desert sand without logical transition. Eventually, the helicopter descended toward a clearing surrounding what appeared to be ancient Greek ruins, pristine white marble. Columns rising improbably from the wilderness. "Welcome to the lunar sanctuary," Diana announced as they touched down. One of the few places where divine energies still flow freely into the mortal realm. The air felt different here, charged with subtle energy that raised goosebumps along his arms. Sunlight filtered through trees with unusual golden quality, while shadows possessed depth beyond normal perception. Diana led him from the helicopter toward the central structure, a circular temple whose architecture combined classical Greek elements with designs he couldn't identify. 12 marb. La columns supported a domed roof etched with astronomical symbols, many matching those from the underground chamber where he'd found the tablet. Not all divine beings incarnate during each cycle, Diana explained as they ascended the temple steps. Some maintain continuous existence across millennia, while others sleep until needed. I am of the former category, a lesser divinity perhaps, but one who remembers the rise and fall of civilizations. Inside the temple, a circular pool of water occupied the center, its surface perfectly still despite lacking any visible containment barrier. Starlight reflected from its depths despite the daylight outside, creating the unsettling impression of gazing into night sky from underwater. The reflecting pool shows truths hidden from conventional perception, Diana explained. For mortals, it reveals their deepest desires and fears. For awakening divinities, she gestured for him to approach. It restores what time has fragmented. Helios hesitated, then knelt beside the pool. His reflection appeared normal for several heartbeats before rippling without external cause. The face looking back transformed subtly, still recognizably him, yet roamed with radiance that extended beyond physical form. Knowledge glinted in those reflected eyes, ancient, powerful, and undeniably familiar. "That's," he began. "You," Diana finished. "As you have been in countless cycles before this one." The reflection extended a hand upward, and Helios found himself mirroring the gesture. When their fingertips met at the water's surface, memories cascaded through his consciousness. Lifetimes spent traversing the heavens, cosmic responsibilities, ancient alliances and rivalries with other divinities. Centuries compressed into seconds as identity expanded beyond human limitation. He pulled back with a gasp, overwhelmed by information his mortal mind struggled to process. "I remember fragments. Enough to know you're telling the truth." Diana nodded, satisfaction evident in her expression. The full restoration of divine memory typically occurs gradually to prevent madness. Your essence remembers even if your consciousness does not. These id entities, they're trying to prevent the reawakening of divine powers before the convergence. Precisely. They've hunted the divine ciphers for millennia, destroying those connected to them when possible. With enough ciphers in their possession, they could potentially unmake creation itself. Helios removed the tablet from his pack, examining it with new understanding. The spiral pattern pulsed gently in response to his touch, golden light emanating from its surface. "I assume we're not safe here indefinitely. No place is truly safe until the convergence concludes. But the sanctuary provides temporary protection through ancient wards." Diana hesitated, unusual uncertainty crossing her features. "There's something else you should know. The tablet you carry, the solar cipher, has a counterpart. The lunar cipher, Helios supplied from newly awakened knowledge." "Yes," currently in the possession of Artemis, the original lunar goddess from whom my essence partially derives. She is displeased with recent developments. Meaning everything the convergence represents. Diana's expression grew complicated. There are prophecies regarding the reunion of Solar and Lunar divinities during this particular cycle, prophecies she has spent centuries attempting to circumvent. Before Helios could request elaboration, a flash of silver light erupted at the temple entrance. When it faded, a woman stood in the doorway, radiating power that made the air itself shiver. Tall and lithe, she possessed an otherworldly beauty rendered severe by the cold fury in her silver eyes. A crescent moon symbol adorned her forehead, glowing with internal light that cast strange shadows across classical features. Diana. The name emerged like winter frost crystallizing on glass. You dare bring a male to the sanctuary. Quote, not just any male, Artemis. The solar harbinger. The newcomer's attention shifted to Helios, her gaze intensifying until it seemed to pierce through physical form to examine the essence beneath. So the cycle turns despite my efforts. Her voice remained frigid, but something complex flickered behind her expression, resentment mingled with reluctant recognition. You've changed little, sun god, still interfering where you don't belong. Helios felt ancient patterns of interaction stirring in response. While you remain as welcoming as ever, moon goddess. Her eyes narrowed dangerously. You remember, then. Fragments only, Diana interjected. His awakening has just begun. How fortunate. Artemis stepped fully into the temple, silver energy trailing from her movements like moonlight-given substance. Perhaps this time he can be persuaded to maintain proper cosmic distance. The comment triggered another memory fragment, eons of orbit. The eternal dance of celestial bodies maintaining distance while locked in gravitational embrace. Something significant lurked behind the metaphor, but full understanding remained tantalizingly out of reach. The Void Collective has mobilized earlier than predicted, Diana said, redirecting the conversation. They attacked the excavation site moments after the solar cipher activated. Artemis's expression shifted to calculating assessment. Then our timeline has accelerated. The convergence approaches more rapidly than the stars foretold. She turned her attention back to Helios. What do you remember of the prophecy, sun god? Nothing specific, he admitted. Just emotional impressions and disconnected images. Convenient, she murmured. With visible reluctance, she withdrew a silver disc from within her garments, a perfect match to his golden tablet, though inscribed with a different pattern. The moment both ciphers occupied the same space, they began to resonate, golden and silver light pulsing in alternating rhythm. The prophecy speaks of union, Diana explained quietly. When sun and moon join as one, the void shall be forever banished or granted eternal dominion. Artemis's expression hardened, an oversimplification. The actual text speaks of marriage between solar and lunar divinities, an impossibility given my sacred vow of eternal maidenhood. The word, Mari, age, triggered another cascade of fragmented memories, ceremonial unions across different cultures and ages, solar and lunar temples connected by processional paths, eclipse celebrations where boundaries between opposing forces dissolved. There must be alternative interpretations, Helios suggested. Symbolic rather than literal union. We've spent centuries exploring alternatives, Diana acknowledged. But prophecy has a way of fulfilling itself despite our attempts at circumvention. Which is precisely why I've maintained separation between solar and lunar essence for 3 full cycles, Artemis added coldly. Until you blundered into that chamber and activated the cipher. The accusation carried weight beyond its surface meaning. Cosmic frustration accumulated across millennia. Hell. iOS sensed ancient arguments resuming their course like celestial bodies returning to familiar orbits. Further discussion halted abruptly as the reflecting pool's surface rippled violently. Images RMED within its depths. The excavation site now consumed by swirling darkness, shadow entities multiplying as they absorbed ambient energy, a concentrated mass of void essence gathering purpose. They've found the resonance trail, Artemis stated flatly. The sanctuary's barriers won't hold against a full manifestation. Diana moved with decisive grace toward a hidden alcove, returning with what appeared to be ancient weaponry, a sword that gleamed with inner light and a circular shield bearing complex engravings. We need to relocate to the secondary site. Barbara is preparing the transport. Artemis lifted her hand, silver light coalescing around her fingers before solidifying into a bow of impossible design, no string visible yet clearly functional. I'll hold the perimeter while you extract the solar harbinger. His essence remains too unstable for direct confrontation. Helios bristled at being discussed as a liability. I destroyed 5 of those creatures before you arrived. Minor fragments, Artemis dismissed. What comes now would consume your partially awakened essence like a candle in hurricane winds. Before he could protest further, the temple floor trembled. Darn. SS seeped between marble tiles as temperature plummeted dramatically. The reflecting pool's surface froze instantly, ice crystals forming patterns that resembled grasping hands reaching upward. We're out of time, Diana announced, tossing him what appeared to be a medallion on a chain. Wear this, it dampens divine energy signatures. Helios slipped the medallion over his head while securing the solar cipher in his pack. The moment the metal touched his skin, his awareness of cosmic energies diminished significantly, like cotton stuffed in spiritual ears. Artemis positioned herself at the temple entrance, silver arrows materializing between her fingers as she knocked the first shaft. Go, I will find you when the path clears. Diana grasped Helios's arm, pulling him toward a previously unnoticed passage behind the pool. Artemis has confronted void manifestations before. She knows the risks. The last glimpse he caught of the moon goddess showed her outlined in silver radiance, IPLE arrows flying simultaneously as shadow entities materialized from darkened corners. Then the passage curved, and she vanished from view. Will she be all right? He asked as they descended rough-hewn steps. Artemis has survived worse over millennia, Diana replied, though concern edged her voice. The greater risk comes if the void entities capture any of the ciphers. The narrow passage end into a natural cavern system illuminated by phosphorescent fungi. Diana navigated the twisting path with confident familiarity, eventually leading them to an underground dock where water flowed with impossible geography. A sleek vessel awaited, more advanced than ancient yet carrying design elements that suggested significant age. The rivers between realms connect sanctuaries throughout the world, she explained as they boarded. Physical distance means little when traveling the cosmic currents. No sooner had they cast off than the cavern behind them collapsed with thunderous force. Anna's expression remained carefully neutral as she guided the vessel into swift-moving water that glowed with subtle luminescence. Artemis collapsed the entrance to cover our escape, she noted quietly. She'll find her own path forward. Quote, Helios settled beside her, watching subterranean scenery blur as the boat accelerated beyond reasonable speeds. You still haven't explained why I'm so important to this cosmic drama. If I'm truly some reincarnated sun god, what makes this cycle different from previous ones? Diana maintained focus on their course, navigating around stone formations with practiced precision. The prophecy speaks specifically of this convergence, the seventh since creation's dawn. Previous cycles maintained balance through separation of opposing forces. This time, she hesitated. This time, separation ensures destruction. Only through union can the void be permanently banished. And by union, you mean this metaphorical marriage between sun and moon. Perhaps not entirely metaphorical. Her tone suggested complexities left unspoken. Divine marriage transcends human understanding, a merging of complementary essence rather than simple ceremony. The explanation raised more questions than it answered, but Helios recognized the futility of pressing further without additional context. Instead, he focused on integrating fragments of recovered memory with High's academic knowledge of mythology and archaeology. The tablet, the solar cipher, there should be records of it in historical documents if it's as significant as you claim. Diana nodded. It appears, throughout history under various names, the sun disk of Ra, Apollo's medallion, the Eye of Surya. Always connected to solar deities, always disappearing before historians could properly document it. Because someone was protecting it. Previous incarnations of your essence, yes. The ciphers attune to specific divine signatures across cycles. They recognize you even when you don't remember yourself. The underground river widened into a subterranean lake whose boundaries vanished into darkness. At its center rose a small island illuminated by crystalline formations that emitted multicolored light. Diana guided their vessel toward a natural dock formed from smooth stone. The crossroads, she announced as they secured the boat. From here, we can access 7 different sanctuaries across the mortal realm. We'll rendezvous with allies who can help protect the cipher while your divine essence stabilizes. The island housed a circle of standing stones reminiscent of ancient European monuments. Each stone featured symbols representing different pantheons: Greek, Egyptian, Norse, Japanese, and others Helios couldn't immediately identify. Diana approached the stone bearing a stylized lightning bolt. "Olympian sanctum," she explained, placing her palm against the carved symbol. "Currently our strongest remaining bastion." Light flared around her hand, spreading through channels C, arced into the stone's surface until the entire monolith glowed. A shimmering distortion appeared within the arch formed by adjacent stones, solidifying into what appeared to be a portal showing different geography beyond its boundary. A deafening crack interrupted the process as the cavern shook violently. Stalactites plunged from the ceiling, splashing into the lake with explosive force. The portal wavered, its edges destabilizing. "They've breached the river network faster than should be possible," Diana growled, drawing her sword. "Something's amplifying their manifestation potential." Darkness spread across the lake's surface like oil, extinguishing the reflected light from crystal formations. From its depths rose a figure different from the wraiths they'd encountered previously, larger, more defined. With glowing violet eyes in an otherwise featureless face. It wore what appeared to be ancient armor composed of solidified shadow, and carried a staff topped with a pulsing void where material should exist. Harbinger of the sun, it addressed Helios directly, its voice bypassing physical sound to resonate within his mind. "Surrender the cipher and your awakening essence. Serve as vessel for the void's manifestation, and your consciousness will be preserved to witness creation's unmaking." Diana positioned herself between Helios and the entity, shield raised defensively. Quote, "Return to the nothing from which you came, Void Lord. You have no dominion in sanctified space." The entity's attention shifted. "Diana of Themyscira, Moon Champion, your interference is noted and will be addressed accordingly." It raised its staff, violet energy gathering at its tip. The convergence comes regardless of resistance. The cycle ends. Instinct drove Helios forward before conscious thought could intervene. He placed his hand on Diana's shoulder, channeling newly awakened power through the connection. Golden light suffused her form, reinforcing her divine aspects. The medallion damping his energy shattered, releasing his essence in a focused surge. "I don't remember everything," he admitted quietly. "But I remember enough to know what we are to each other. What we've always been." Understanding flashed across her features as their energies synchronized, solar and lunar essence intertwining through ancient patterns. Her sword blazed with combined power as she advanced toward the Void Lord. "The cycle continues," she countered, striking with blinding speed. The entity parried with its staff, violet energy clashing against gold-silver radiance with reality-distorting force. Each exchange sent shockwaves across the cavern, shattering crystal formations and fracturing stone. Helios focused on maintaining the energy flow between them, drawing upon fragmented memory of similar battles across countless cycles. This connection, this partnership between complementary forces, felt fundamentally right in ways he couldn't articulate. They moved in perfect synchronicity. Why, despite never having fought together in this lifetime? The Void Lord recognized its disadvantage quickly, disengaging to create distance. "Premature union," it hissed, genuine concern coloring its mental voice. "The prophecy remains incomplete without the prime lunar essence." It thrust its staff into the lake's surface, creating a vortex of absolute darkness. "We shall meet again when the alignment nears completion, Harbinger. Consider carefully which aspect of the prophecy you wish to fulfill." The entity dissolved into the vortex, which collapsed upon itself with imploding force. The unnatural darkness receded from the lake, though the cavern's damage remained extensive. Diana lowered her weapon, their combined radiance gradually fading as the immediate threat passed. "That was foolish," she admonished, though without genuine anger. "Exposing your essence before full awakening risks accelerated attention from greater void entities." "It worked, didn't it?" Helios countered, alluration from the power exchange still coursing through his system. "That connection between us, it felt natural," she finished quietly. "It always does." The portal between standing stones had stabilized during their confrontation. The pathway beyond now clearly visible, a marble-columned courtyard beneath impossibly blue sky. We should proceed quickly, Diana suggested, professional demeanor reasserting itself. The Olympian sanctum will provide better protection while we await Artemis. Helios hesitated at the threshold, struck by the symbolic weight of the step he was about to take. Beyond that boundary waited a world of divine politics, ancient prophecies, and cosmic responsibilities, none of which he'd asked for, yet all feeling inexplicably familiar. The person I was yesterday, the archaeologist, the researcher, is he gone? The question emerged more vulnerable than intended. Diana's expression softened with understanding accumulated across millennia. Nothing is ever truly lost in the cycle, Helios. Your human experiences, connections, and knowledge become part of your divine essence, enriching rather than replacing what came before. She extended her hand toward him, an invitation rather than demand. The path forward remains yours to choose, as it has been in every cycle. Helios took her hand, acceptance flowing through the connection between them. Then let's see what destiny has waiting on the other side. Together, they stepped through the portal into divine light beyond. Chapter 1 and Chapter 2, Moonlight's Challenge. Silver light cascaded through ancient pine boughs, casting dappled patterns across the forest floor where Artemis knelt. Frost crystals formed beneath her fingertips as she touched the disturbed earth, reading impressions left hours before. The woodland fell silent around her, creatures instinctively recognizing the presence of a predator far above their station in nature's hierarchy. 3 of them, she murmured, more to herself than the shadowy figures maintaining respectful distance behind her. Moving northeast, faster than before, Talia Grace stepped forward, the silver circlet marking her as lieutenant gleaming against raven hair. Unlike her goddess, whose divine nature rendered her ageless perfection, Talia's appearance reflected her origin, a demigod frozen at 16 when she'd pledged eternal service to the hunt. Electric blue eyes scanned the trail with practiced efficiency. The disturbance patterns match what we tracked in Siberia, she observed, voice carrying the slight rasp of someone accustomed to command. Void essence contaminating the natural energy flows. Artemis rose in a fluid motion no mortal could replicate, moonlight seeming to cling to her form as she moved. They're growing bolder, venturing closer to populated areas. Her expression hardened. The convergence approaches more rapidly than anticipated. 20 additional hunters materialized from the shadows of black forest pines. Their silver parkas and combat gear designed for both concealment and mobility. Each carried a bow that seemed to exist in perfect harmony with its bearer, extensions of will rather than mere weapons. The hunters of Artemis represented the goddess's expanded awareness across the mortal realm, her chosen instruments when divine intervention required subtlety. Phoebe, oldest among the current hunters, approached with characteristic directness. The German authorities have reported unusual wildlife behavior across 3 states. Nocturnal creatures active during daylight hours, predators abandoning territories, mass migration patterns disrupting ecosystems. Classic signs of void corruption, Artemis confirmed. The natural world recoils from their presence even when mortals remain oblivious. She closed her eyes briefly, extending divine senses beyond physical limitations. The forest appeared differently through this perception, networks of life energy interconnecting all living things. Flowing patterns that had maintained consistent rhythms for millennia. Within this harmonious tapestry, dark interruptions spread like ink through water, areas where natural energy had been consumed or corrupted by foreign essence. What troubled her most was the methodical nature of the corruption. Previous convergence cycles had featured chaotic void manifestations, entities appearing randomly wherever cosmic barriers thinned. This time, the pattern suggested purpose, strategic positioning around locations significant to divine workings. They're establishing a perimeter, she realized, eyes snapping open, surrounding something they perceive as threatening. Talia examined the digital topographic display on her wrist device, a concession to modern efficiency that Artemis tolerated among her hunters. The corruption pattern centers approximately 30 kilometers northeast, near the ruins of Externstein. Ancient recognition flickered through Artemis's consciousness. The stone gates, a minor nexus point where solar and lunar ley lines intersect. Her expression darkened. Once a significant worship site for multiple pantheons. You believe they're targeting divine convergence points? Phoebe asked. Not targeting. Containing. Artemis's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. They've sensed the awakening. The implication hung in chill night air, and spoken yet understood by her senior hunters. After 3 cycles of careful separation, solar and lunar essence had reconnected. The prophecy mechanism had engaged despite her millennia of countermeasures. Helios had returned. Rage and something far more complicated flared beneath her immortal composure. 3 full cycles, nearly 20,000 years, she'd maintained the cosmic distance required to prevent this precise outcome. Through careful manipulation of reincarnation patterns and strategic intervention at critical moments, she'd ensured that solar divine essence remained dormant or fragmented, never coalescing sufficiently to fully awaken its harbinger. Until now, prepare for combat engagement, she instructed, pushing distracting thoughts aside. Standard containment protocol with emphasis on purification rather than destruction. The void entities must be prevented from establishing permanent corruption within the nexus. The hunters dispersed with practiced efficiency, moving through the forest with supernatural silence. Artemis lingered momentarily, fingertips pressed against ancient bark as she communed with the woodland itself. Trees held memories spanning centuries, patient witnesses to the eternal dance between divine forces. Your burden grows heavy, mistress, observed a quiet voice behind her. Artemis didn't turn, recognizing Zoe Nightshade's distinctive cadence. Unlike Talia, whose service spanned mere decades, Zoe had accompanied Artemis for millennia, a companion whose presence predated modern civilization. Her archaic speech patterns and formal address remain unchanged despite centuries of evolution in human language. The burden of divinity is eternal, old friend, Artemis replied softly. As is the responsibility that accompanies it. Thou hast my Ntained separation longer than any believed possible, Zoe noted. Perhaps the prophecy manifests now because it must. Irritation flickered across divine features. Prophecy is merely probability calcified into certainty through observation and expectation. I refuse to surrender cosmic autonomy to predetermined outcomes. Zoe's expression revealed neither agreement nor contradiction, the face of someone who had witnessed her goddess's stubborn defiance of fate across ages. The solar harbinger's awakening changes circumstances regardless of thy preference. A complication, nothing more. Artemis strung her bow with a decisive motion, silver energy coalescing into an arrow between her fingers. The prophecy specifies willing union. My will remains unchanged after 20,000 years. Further discussion halted as distant silver flares illuminated the forest canopy, her hunters engaging the first void entities. Artemis launched herself forward, moving with preternatural speed through underbrush that seemed to part voluntarily before her passage. Zoe followed silently, centuries of synchronized movement evident in their coordinated approach. The battle unfolded across a natural clearing where massive stones erupted from earth in formation too precise for random geological processes. 12 hunters maintained a perimeter, silver arrows flying with impossible accuracy into darkness that defied consistent form. Unlike the lesser wraiths that typically served as void vanguard, these entities displayed greater substance, humanoid shapes composed of concentrated shadow with violet energy pulsing at their cores. Void stalkers, Artemis identified, analyzing their composition with divine perception. Second-tier manifestations capable of corrupting living organisms. 3 stalkers moved with disturbing coordination, attempting to flank the hunter formation while avoiding direct confrontation. Their objective became clear as they converged toward the largest standing stone at the clearing's center, a megalith covered in weathered carvings that gleamed with subtle luminescence under moonlight. They seek to corrupt the Nexus anchor, Artemis realized. Talia, Containment Pattern 7. The lieutenant responded instantly, directing half the hunters to reform their defensive line while others maintained suppression fire. Silver arrows rained upon the stalkers, momentarily forcing them back from the megalith. The entities emitted high-pitched keening that existed beyond conventional sound, vibrations that disrupted thought patterns in less disciplined minds. Artemis moved to the formation's center, pressing her palm against the ancient stone. Carved symbols illuminated fully at her touch, revealing complex patterns representing celestial movements across thousands of years. The megalith served as both record and focus point for astronomical alignments significant to divine workings, particularly those involving solar and lunar aspects. What she found confirmed her worst fears. The approaching convergence wasn't merely another celestial alignment but a perfect synchronization occurring once in 7 cycles. The stone recorded previous ch events, catastrophic reality fractures, divine wars, and fundamental restructuring of cosmic hierarchies. The very alignment the prophecy specified for the union of sun and moon. A void stalker breached the defensive perimeter, moving with liquid grace between silver arrows. It lunged toward Artemis with extending shadow tendrils that sizzled through air molecules. Without looking away from the megalith, she released 3 arrows simultaneously, each striking with precision that separated the entity's core from its manifested form. Violet energy dispersed harmlessly as the shadow collapsed. The corruption spreads faster than we can contain it, Talia reported, backing toward the central stone while maintaining continuous fire. These manifestations are stronger than previous encounters. Artemis completed her examination of the astronomical record, expression grim as she rejoined the battle. They draw power from the approaching alignment. As barriers between realms thin, their manifestation potential increases exponentially. 7 stalkers remained, adapting their tactics based on observed hunter techniques, an intelligence beyond mindless aggression. They synchronized the IR movements to create overlapping patterns of shadow that absorbed incoming arrows without sustaining damage to their cores. Fall back to the Nexus Stone, Artemis commanded. Purification Protocol. The hunters executed a practiced maneuver, contracting their circle around the megalith while maintaining continuous suppression fire. Once positioned, each hunter placed one hand against the stone, while continuing to defend with their free arm. Silver energy flowed from the connected hunters into ancient carvings, amplifying the Nexus Point's natural resistance to corruption. Artemis drew back her bowstring, 3 arrows materializing simultaneously as she channeled deeper reserves of divine essence. Moonlight condensed around the arrowheads, transforming from gentle illumination to concentrated power capable of severing connections between realms. Return to the void between worlds, she intoned formally, ancient language giving weight to the command. Your manifestation is rejected by the divine order. The arrows flew with reality-distorting precision, striking 3 stalkers simultaneously before continuing through their dissolving forms to impact 3 more. Only the lead entity managed partial evasion, losing a portion of its manifested shadow while retreating beyond the clearing's boundary. Silence returned to the forest as purifying energy radiated outward from the megalith, neutralizing lingering corruption. The hunters maintained their formation until Artemis gave the signal to stand down, her divine senses confirming no immediate threats remained. Establish a warding perimeter, she instructed. Standard surveillance pattern with doubled sentries. The void entities will attempt to return once they've reconsolidated. As her hunters dispersed to execute orders, Artemis returned her attention to the astronomical record carved in ancient stone. The implications troubled her on multiple levels. If the convergence truly matched the 7-cycle alignment pattern, the stakes extended beyond her personal resistance to prophesied union. Reality itself became vulnerable during such alignments, cosmic architecture briefly malleable enough for fundamental restructuring. The perfect opportunity for the Void Collective to unmake creation. She traced specific constellations with growing concern, calculating precise timing based on carving sequence. 3 weeks, she murmured. Perhaps 4 before perfect alignment. Significantly accelerated from previous estimates, Zoe noted, appearing silently beside her. The awakening of solar essence must have catalyzed the process. Frustration flared behind Artemis's carefully maintained composure. Even her deliberate actions had ultimately served the prophecy's mechanism, creating pressure that ensued. Read more dramatic reunion once containment failed. The cosmic irony wasn't lost on her. Before she could formulate response, a communication device at Talia's belt emitted the distinctive tone indicating priority contact from Olympian Command. The lieutenant activated it with practiced efficiency, projection flaring to life above her palm. Diana's face materialized in the holographic display, her expression conveying urgency without panic. Artemis, the sanctuary has been compromised. Helios and I have relocated to the Olympian Sanctum, but void manifestations are tracking our movement patterns across nexus points. The Solar Harbinger's awakening remains incomplete, Artemis replied, deliberately using formal address rather than acknowledging the reborn god as an individual. His unshielded essence practically broadcasts location to void entities. Diana's expression revealed brief irritation before professional focus reasserted itself. Which is precisely why we need to accelerate his integration and training. The cipher responds to him despite partial awakening. We have confirmation of compatibility. The implication hung unspoken between them, compatibility suggesting Prop. Hesi fulfillment despite Artemis's continued resistance. The moon goddess deliberately redirected the conversation. We've encountered organized void manifestations establishing corruption perimeters around nexus points, specifically those with solar-lunar resonance. Their tactical coordination suggests higher-order intelligence directing lesser entities. Concern flickered across Diana's projected features. The Void Lords should not be capable of manifesting this early in the alignment process. Unless they've acquired additional divine ciphers, Artemis countered grimly. How secure is your current location? Standard Olympian protocols with additional warding specific to Void Essence. Zeus has assigned personal guards to the Solar Harbinger while integration proceeds. Artemis's expression cooled noticeably. I see the council wasted no time welcoming their prodigal sun god. How politically convenient. Diana sighed, momentarily dropping formal communication protocols. Your personal feelings about the prophecy don't change the strategic reality, Artemis. We need both solar and lunar ciphers protected and operational before the convergence completes. That means Cooperati, on regardless of historical complications. Historical complications, Artemis repeated with dangerous softness. An interesting euphemism for cosmic manipulation spanning multiple cycles. We don't have time for this. Diana's tone conveyed centuries of familiarity with the moon goddess's stubbornness. The Olympian Council requests your immediate presence to coordinate defensive preparations. Will you come willingly, or should I inform them you're otherwise occupied? The political maneuver was transparent but effective. Refusing a formal council request during emerging crisis would wound Artemis is standing among the pantheon, a tactical disadvantage she couldn't afford if alternative interpretations of the prophecy remained possible. The hunters will maintain Nexus security here, she decided after momentary consideration. Talia and Zoe will accompany me to Olympus. Expect our arrival within 12 hours. Relief briefly softened Diana's expression. I'll inform the council. Safe journey. The projection dissolved, leaving Artemis staring at the megalith with complex emotions churning beneath divine composure. After 20,000 years of careful manipulation to prevent exactly this convergence of circumstances, events accelerated beyond her ability to redirect them. The irony tasted bitter as mountain ash on her tongue. Prepare for Olympian transition, she instructed her lieutenants crisply. Phoebe will assume field command during our absence. As her hunters executed orders with characteristic efficiency, Artemis allowed herself one private moment of doubt. Perhaps Zoe was right. Perhaps the prophecy manifested now precisely because further delay threatened greater cosmic consequences. The timing of the 7-cycle alignment with Helios's awaken. Ing suggested orchestration beyond even divine manipulation. Not that acknowledging cosmic inevitability made the prospect of reunion any more palatable. The journey to Olympus unfolded through ways beyond mortal comprehension. Divine transit that compressed vast distances through manipulation of reality's underlying architecture. For beings of lesser power, such travel required elaborate preparation and significant energy expenditure. For Artemis, primary goddess of a major pantheon, reality itself offered minimal resistance. Mount Olympus existed simultaneously as physical location and metaphysical construct, the mountain in Greece serving as anchor point for a divine realm that transcended conventional geography. Its true appearance shifted depending on the observer's nature and purpose, revealing only what each visitor possessed the capacity to comprehend. To Artemis's divine perception, Olympus manifested as crystalline architecture of impossible complexity, structures flowing seamlessly between states of matter according to function and symbolic significance. Lights that never existed in the electromagnetic spectrum illuminated courtyards where physics operated by negotiation rather than natural law. Divine beings of varying power levels moved through interconnected spaces that occasionally intersected with mortal reality where worship or significant events created temporary bridges. The central complex housed the Olympian Council chambers, a space that expanded and contracted according to attendance requirements. As Artemis approached with her lieutenants following respectfully behind, she noted increased security measures manifesting throughout the divine architecture. Barriers shimmered with reinforced warding against void contamination, while minor deities assigned to defense rotations maintained vigilant observation of transition points between realms. Crisis preparation had clearly begun in earnest. The council chamber doors recognized her divine signature, flowing open without physical contact. Inside, a familiar scene unfolded, the Olympian power structure displayed through seating arrangement and symbolic positioning. 12 primary thrones, arranged in hierarchical formation, dominated the space, with secondary seating accommodating allied pantheons and specialized divinities. Zeus occupied the central position, his form manifesting as a perfect union of ancient and modern authority, traditional Greek aesthetics combined with subtle indicators of contemporary power dynamics. To his right sat Hera, whose calculating assessment tracked Artemis's entrance with the evaluation of a chess master considering potential piece movements. Apollo's throne remained conspicuously empty, the sun god's essence having fragmented during previous cycles rather than maintaining continuous existence. Other Olympians displayed varying levels of interest or concern. Athena's analytical attention, Ares's barely restrained aggression, Aphrodite's calculating speculation regarding romantic implications. Divine politics never changed despite millennia of evolution in the mortal realm. Alliances, rivalries, and power plays merely adapted to contemporary contexts. What drew Artemis's immediate attention, however, was the figure standing beside Diana near the chamber's center. Helios Uzumaki appeared simultaneously ordinary and extraordinary, physically unremarkable by divine standards yet radiating solar essence with increasing coherence as awakening progressed. His mortal form housed power that had once traversed the heavens daily, bringing light and life to countless civilizations. Their gazes met across the chamber, triggering recognition that transcended current incarnation. For a disorienting moment, Artemis perceived him as he had been, crowned in solar radiance. Driving the golden chariot across celestial paths, maintaining the cosmic balance she so fiercely protected. The double vision faded quickly, leaving only the mortal archaeologist with increasingly divine awareness reflected in azure eyes. Artemis. Zeus's voice resonated with authority that defined natural law rather than obeying it. Your presence completes our emergency session. The council recognizes the lunar prime and her representatives. Formal acknowledgement established, Artemis approached the central space with measured grace, positioning herself precisely to maintain both hierarchical respect and personal distance from the awakening sun god. Talia and Zoe assumed traditional positions behind their goddess, expressions carefully neutral despite the charged atmosphere. The council requested my presence regarding defensive preparations, Artemis stated, deliberately focusing on tactical matters rather than prophecy implications. My hunters. Report organized void manifestations establishing strategic corruption at solar-lunar nexus points throughout Europe. Pattern analysis suggests coordination beyond previous convergence cycles. Athena leaned forward, gray eyes calculating probable outcomes with machine-like precision. Similar reports have emerged from Asia, North America, and Oceania. The Void Collective operates with unprecedented synchronization across realms, which coincides precisely with the awakening of solar divine essence, Artemis noted, allowing subtle accusation to color her tone. After 3 cycles of stability through careful separation, Zeus raised his hand, preventing potential argument with a gesture that commanded automatic response even from fellow divinities. The timing of Helios's return follows cosmic patterns beyond individual manipulation, regardless of well-intentioned intervention. The 7-cycle alignment approaches with or without divine participation, and conveniently aligns with prophecy requirements. Artemis countered, unable to completely suppress millennia of frustration. A prophecy that specifically requires my participation in a union I have explicitly rejected across multiple cycles. Uncomfortable silence descended upon the chamber as the core conflict manifested openly. The prophecy had been debated exhaustively across millennia, interpreted and reinterpreted by divine scholars seeking alternative pathways. Yet its fundamental elements remained immutable. Solar and lunar union during the 7th alignment would either permanently seal the void or grant it dominion over all creation. Diana stepped forward, bridging the growing tension with diplomatic precision honed through centuries mediating between stubborn immortals. Perhaps we should allow Helios to contribute his perspective, given his central role in current circumstances. All attention shifted to the solar harbinger, whose expression revealed calm assessment rather than intimidation despite the gathered divine power. When he spoke, his voice carried the pragmatic directness of a scientist rather than formal divine cadence. I understand my awakening complicates existing power dynamics, he began, meeting each divine gaze without deference or challenge. My memories remain fragmented, but certain fundamental truths have crystallized since the solar cipher activated. The void call. Lective represents entropic dissolution of creation, not merely opposing divine order but unmaking the foundational patterns that allow existence itself. He turned toward Artemis directly, azure eyes, reflecting intelligent recognition of her resistance. The prophecy speaks of union between opposing forces to create balance capable of permanent sealing. I'm neither demanding participation nor dismissing legitimate concerns about autonomy. I'm suggesting we explore the full spectrum of interpretations before assuming marriage in the conventional sense represents the only viable pathway. The practical approach momentarily disarmed Artemis's prepared arguments. She'd anticipated arrogance, entitlement, or manipulative pressure, reactions consistent with previous solar incarnations who had tempted to enforce prophecy fulfillment through political leverage. Instead, Helios offered analytical collaboration without presumption. Before she could formulate response, Aphrodite interjected WITH characteristic focus on relationship dynamics. Divine union transcends mortal conception of marriage, the love goddess observed, her form shifting subtly to reflect idealized beauty standards across multiple cultures simultaneously. The prophecy speaks to essential nature rather than ceremony, the fundamental complementary opposition between solar and lunar aspects that maintains cosmic equilibrium. Precisely my point, Helios agreed. Archaeological evidence across cultures suggests marriage between sun and moon deities represented conceptual balance rather than literal relationship. The prophecy could be referencing cosmic functionality rather than interpersonal dynamics. Artemis narrowed her eyes, centuries of political maneuvering making her suspicious of apparent reasonableness. An interesting theory from someone whose divine memories remain conveniently fragmented. Previous incarnations proved significantly more insistent regarding prophecy fulfillment. Something flickered behind his expression, recognition of dynamics beyond his current memory access. I can only speak from my present understanding, incomplete as it may be. My priority remains preventing void ascendance through whatever means prove most effective. A pragmatic approach, Athena noted with approval. Though prophecy rarely accommodates pragmatism when fundamental cosmic forces align. Z.S. redirected the discussion with practiced authority. Theoretical interpretation can proceed alongside practical preparation. The immediate concern remains protecting the divine ciphers until optima. Deployment opportunity during alignment. Artemis, you carry the lunar cipher. She inclined her head in acknowledgement, one hand instinctively moving toward the silver disk concealed within her garments. The lunar cipher's presence pulsed against her awareness, responding to proximity with its solar counterpart despite her efforts to dampen the connection. Both ciphers must remain within Olympian protection until the convergence completes, Zeus continued. Additional security protocols will be implemented immediately, with rotating pantheon representatives maintaining constant surveillance. The political implication wasn't subtle. Her movement would be restricted, her interactions monitored under the guise of security concerns. After millennia operating with relative autonomy, the constraint chafed against divine pride. Yet refusing would validate suspicions regarding her commitment to cosmic protection regardless of personal preference. My hunters require leadership during increased void activity, she countered, seeking compromise rather than direct confrontation. Their effectiveness diminishes significantly without divine guidance. Diana will coordinate with the hunters while you remain in Olympus. Zeus decided, his tone indicating the matter settled. Her partial lunar aspect provides sufficient resonance for tactical operations. Diplomatic checkmate. Artemis maintained neutral expression despite internal frustration. Zeus had effectively neutralized her primary excuse for avoiding prolonged proximity to the awakening sun god while simultaneously placing her most loyal forces under direction from the one lunar deity most sympathetic to prophecy fulfillment. As the council determines, she conceded with minimal grace. The formal session concluded WITH additional security assignments and communication protocols established for cross-pantheon coordination. As divine representatives dispersed to their respective responsibilities, Artemis found her self approaching Diana with determined purpose, Talia and Zoe following at respectful distance. "A word before you assume command of my hunters," she requested, though her tone made it more demand than request. Diana nodded, leading them toward a private alcove designed for confidential conversations. Athena's architecture ensured absolute privacy through metaphysical barriers that prevented both conventional and divine eavesdropping, one of the few locations in Olympus where words remain truly private. Once secured within the space, Artemis abandoned diplomatic pretense entirely. 20,000 years of careful separation undone in days, and suddenly I'm confined to Olympus while prophecy mechanisms accelerate unchallenged. How remarkably convenient for those supporting union interpretation. Diana sighed, her expression revealing genuine concern beneath political positioning. This isn't political manipulation, Artemis. The 7-cycle alignment would proceed regardless of Helios's awakening or your cooperation. The void entity's unprecedented coordination suggests they've acquired additional divine ciphers during previous cycles, power sufficient to potentially succeed in unmaking creation if the alignment concludes without counterbalance. And I'm simply expected to surrender autonomy because the stakes are sufficiently apocalyptic. Artemis's silver eyes flashed dangerously. My sacred oath of maidenhood wasn't made lightly or without understanding cosmic implications. No one is demanding you abandon your oath, Diana countered. Helios himself suggested LTER native interpretations that maintain essential autonomy while fulfilling prophecy requirements. A convenient position while his memories remain conveniently fragmented. Suspicion colored her tone. Previous incarnations proved significantly more insistent regarding conventional union. Diana's expression shifted, revealing unexpected vulnerability beneath political calculation. He's different this cycle, she admitted quietly. The mortal identity integrated more completely with divine essence rather than being overridden during awakening. His approach to godhood itself differs fundamentally from previous incarnations. Something in her tone caught Artemis's attention, personal assessment beyond strategic evaluation. You've formed preliminary attachment, she realized with sudden clarity. After mere days of interaction. Diana didn't deny the observation, her composure momentarily revealing complexity beneath professional facade. I recognize familiar essence within new context, she corrected carefully. My partial lunar nature responds to complementary aspects within solar manifestation, precisely as cosmic design intends. How convenient that your design aligns perfectly with political expedience, Artemis noted coldly. The Council must appreciate such cooperative cosmic architecture. This isn't about politics or prophecy manipulation, Diana insisted with unusual intensity. It's about recognizing genuine threat requiring unified response. The void entities that attacked the sanctuary demonstrated capabilities beyond previous manifestations, organization, tactical adaptation, and specific targeting protocols focused on divine essence disruption. The uncharacteristic emotion gave Artemis pause. Diana typically maintained careful balance between diplomat and warrior, rarely revealing personal investment in political outcomes. Her evident concern suggested observations beyond what had been shared in council session. You encountered something beyond standard void manifestation, Artemis surmised, divine intuition connecting fragmentary evidence. Something that genuinely concerns you despite millennia of combat experience. Diana hesitated, glancing toward Talia and Zoe before responding. The entity that manifested at the crossroads demonstrated characteristics consistent with Avatar-class Void Lords, manifestations typically impossible before final alignment stage. It specifically identified Helios as harbinger rather than merely targeting the solar cipher. The implication sent cold certainty through Artemis's being. Avatar Claw. SS manifestations represented direct projection from the Void Collective's central consciousness, entities capable of corrupting divine essence directly rather than merely consuming it. Their apparank, months before alignment completion suggested fundamental changes to cosmic barrier integrity. The corruption spreads faster than previously documented, she acknowledged reluctantly. My hunters encountered coordinated stalkers rather than random wraiths, tactical deployment rather than opportunistic manifestation. Precisely why we need coordinated defense regardless of prophecy implications, Diana pressed. The ciphers represent our most effective countermeasure against void corruption, especially when synchronized through complementary essence. Artemis's expression remained coldly skeptical. Synchronization conveniently advances union interpretation while undermining alternative approaches. Theoretical purity matters little if reality unravels before alternatives can be implemented. Diana countered with uncharacteristic sharpness. At minimum, proximity allows experimentation with different synchronization methods while maintaining essence separation. The practical suggestion provided potential compromise without requiring immediate concession on prophecy interpretation. Artemis considered momentarily before offering conditional agreement. I will remain within Olympus and participate in experimental synchronization research, she decided, with explicit understanding that no interpretation claiming mandatory divine marriage will be implemented without my express consent after thorough exploration of alternatives. Relief visibly relaxed Diana's posture. A reasonable approach the council should find acceptable. She hesitated before adding, "You might see Onsider actually speaking with Helios directly rather than exchanging political positions through intermediaries. His scientific background offers perspective previous incarnations lacked. I'll consider it," Artemis replied noncommittally. Meanwhile, the hunters require clear directives regarding nexus point protection. Talia will provide current deployment information and communication protocols. As her lieutenant stepped forward to coordinate with Diana, Artemis withdrew slightly into private consideration. The situation presented genuine cosmic threat requiring response regardless of personal preference. If alternative interpretations of union truly existed, identifying them required intellectual collaboration she deliberately avoided across previous cycles. Perhaps direct interaction with this supposedly different incarnation might reveal overlooked possibilities. Not that she intended to admit such consideration to Diana, whose evident attachment suggested compromised objectivity regardless of strategic validity. The strategy session concluded with operational protocols established for hunter deployment under Diana's guidance. As the others prepared to depart, Artemis addressed Zoe privately. "Remain with Diana as my direct representative," she instructed. "Observe the Solar Harbinger's interactions with minimal interference. I require unfiltered assessment of his character and intentions beyond council presentation." Zoe inclined her head in acknowledgement, ancient loyalty evident in her unwavering gaze. "I shall observe with clarity unclouded by prophecy expectation." "Precisely what I require," Artemis confirmed, momentary gratitude softening her expression. Few beings in existence had witnessed her struggles across multiple cycles. Her consistent lieutenant remained among the handful she trusted implicitly. After their departure, Artemis made her way through crystalline corridors toward private quarters traditionally reserved for her during Olympian residence. Athena's architectural design ensured each divine space reflected its occupant's essential nature, her chambers manifesting as elegant synthesis of woodland sanctuary and celestial observatory. Moonlight illuminated interior spaces regardless of external conditions, while constellation patterns shifted across ceiling surfaces according to astronomical progressions in the mortal realm. Solitude provided opportunity for unguarded reflection impossible during political maneuvering. The seven-cycle alignment represented cosmic junction point beyond her individual concerns, a fundamental restructuring opportunity for reality itself. Previous such alignments had coincided with pantheon ascensions, divine wars, and metaphysical architecture revisions that altered how divine power manifested across mortal realms. The stakes transcended personal autonomy, however fiercely she defended it. Removing the lunar cipher from concealment, Artemis placed the silver disk upon a specifically designed pedestal at the chamber's center. The spiral pattern inscribed upon its surface illuminated with gentle radiance, responding to proximity with its creator's essence. Unlike the solar cipher, whose power remained partially dormant during Harbinger transitions, the lunar cipher had maintained continuous connection with her across multiple cycles, an extension of divine will rather than separate artifact. Which made its recent behavior particularly troubling. Since Helios's awakening, the cipher had demonstrated increasing resonance patterns independent of her conscious direction, calling to its solar counterpart across metaphysical distance. The connection manifested visibly now as faint golden threads interweaving with silver radiance, creating patterns matching astronomical projections of the approaching alignment. Proximity increases synchronization potential regardless of conscious intention, observed a thoughtful voice from the chamber entrance. Artemis turned sharply, instinctively summoning her bow before recognizing Athena's distinctive presence. The wisdom goddess waited patiently for acknowledgement before entering fully, her form manifesting intellectual authority through subtle symbolism rather than dramatic presentation. "You might have announced yourself," Artemis noted with mild irritation, dismissing her weapon with practiced gesture. "And Ms. said genuine reaction rather than political performance." Athena raised an eyebrow, analytical gaze assessing the cipher's behavior with scientific interest. The autonomous synchronization suggests prophecy fulfillment may proceed regardless of conscious cooperation, natural cosmic process rather than enforced divine manipulation. A conclusion suspiciously aligned with Union proponents' position, Artemis countered. Though without genuine hostility, unlike most Olympians, Athena approached cosmic mechanics as intellectual puzzle rather than political opportunity, her analysis typically unclouded by manipulative agenda. "Observation without predetermined interpretation," Athena corrected mildly. "The ciphers demonstrate behavior consistent with designed function rather than external interference. They seek equilibrium state through complementary resonance, the fundamental architecture underlying creation itself." She approached the pedestal with respectful caution, studying the interweaving patterns without attempting physical contact. "Fascinating. The synchronization architecture appears fractally recursive, patterns repeating across multiple scales simultaneously. Cosmic principle, less manifesting through symbolic representation. Poetic observation doesn't address practical concerns regarding autonomy preservation," Artemis noted dryly. Athena's expression revealed momentary amusement. 20,000 years maintaining separation, yet fundamental questions remain unaddressed in favor of stubborn resistance. "Have you ever directly asked what union specifically requires? According to original prophecy text rather than subsequent interpretation." The question landed with unexpected impact, highlighting centuries of deliberate avoidance. Artemis had opposed union conceptually without exploring precise implementation requirements, resistance to principle rather than practice. The original text specifies sacred marriage between silver and gold when seventh cycle completes its turning. She recited from perfect memory. Traditional interpretation across pantheons consistently indicates divine coupling. Traditional interpretation reflects cultural expectations rather than cosmic requirement. Athena countered. Sacred marriage represented numerous concepts across ancient civilizations: symbolic representation, energy exchange, philosophical harmony, mathematical balance. Physical union constituted merely one interpretation among many possibilities. The perspective wasn't entirely new, similar arguments had emerged during previous cycles. Yet something in Athena's clinical presentation prompted deeper consideration than emotional resistance had previously allowed. "You believe alternative interpretation remains viable despite advanced synchronization stage. I believe scientific exploration without predetermined conclusion represents wisdom rather than surrender," Athena replied carefully. The solar harbinger's background provides unique opportunity for collaborative research impossible during previous incarnations. His analytical approach offers fresh perspective unconstrained by divine tradition. Suspicion flickered through silver eyes. "You've already spoken with him." "Intellectual curiosity demands comprehensive data collection," Athena acknowledged without apology. "His theories regarding symbolic fulfillment through mathematical resonance merit experimental verification, particularly given the cipher's autonomous behavior." Manipulated once again, Artemis thought with resignation. Athena's strategic maneuvering proved subtler than Zeus's direct constraints, yet ultimately directed toward identical outcome, forcing direct interaction with the awakening sun god under circumstances preventing simple rejection. Experimental protocols have already been designed," she noted with ironic acceptance. "Preliminary frameworks established with flexibility for adjustment based on participant feedback," Athena confirmed. Momentary satisfaction visible before neutral analysis reasserted itself. "The laboratory space has been prepared with appropriate warding against external observation or interference." Of course it had. Olympian politics operated with predictable inevitability despite surface chaos, pieces maneuvered into optimal position through centuries of patient calculation. "I'll review the experimental design before committing to participation," Artemis stated, maintaining final decision authority despite recognition of diminishing alternatives. A reasonable approach consistent with scientific method, Athena approved. Already moving toward departure. At the threshold, she paused momentarily. Personal perspective based on millennia of observation. This incarnation genuinely differs from predecessors. His questions focus on cosmic mechanics rather than prophetic entitlement, curiosity rather than certainty. Perhaps difference sufficient to warrant reconsideration rather than automatic resistance. With that final observation, she departed, leaving Artemis alone with the increasingly synchronized cipher and uncomfortably novel thoughts regarding approaching interaction. If Athena, among the most analytical and least romantically inclined Olympians, noted fundamental difference in this solar incarnation, perhaps genuine alternatives existed beyond stubborn resistance or complete surrender. Not that she intended to approach the situation with naive optimism. 20,000 years of carefully maintained separation deserved at minimum thorough scientific verification before considering compromise. The following morning found Artemis approaching Athena's laboratory complex with outward composure masking internal conflict. The space occupied unique position within Olympian architecture, a region where natural laws maintained consistent operation rather than yielding to divine preference. Experimental verification required reliable baseline conditions unbent by conflicting divine wills. Athena awaited her arrival with characteristic punctuality, data displays already configured for the planned synchronization experiments. The wisdom goddess had adopted laboratory attire reflecting her current scientific focus, practical garments designed for unrestricted movement while maintaining appropriate divine dignity. The solar harbinger will join us momentarily, she explained, gesturing toward instrumentation surrounding a central platform where two pedestal positions had been prepared. Initial protocols focus on measuring autonomous synchronization patterns without conscious divine direction. Establishing baseline relationship between the ciphers independent of bearer intention. Artemis examined the experimental setup with critical assessment, noting protection mechanisms designed to contain potential energy discharge while preventing external interference. Multiple recording systems employed different methodologies: physical instrumentation, divine perception captures, and metaphysical pattern recognition algorithms developed across centuries of Athena's research. Comprehensive, she acknowledged with grudging approval. Though containment specify, cations seem calibrated for significantly greater synchronization potential than the ciphers have demonstrated previously. Theoretical maximum rather than observed behavior, Athena clarified. Pre-bias interaction occurred under less controlled circumstances with deliberate suppression from at least one participant. True synchronization potential remains undocumented in modern record. Before Artemis could respond, the laboratory entrance reconfigured to admit Helios, accompanied by Diana serving as apparent guide through Olympian architecture. The solar harbinger had abandoned archeologue Ical field attire for clothing that combined contemporary design with subtle references to traditional Greek aesthetics, practical yet appropriate for divine context. The transformation appeared neither complete surrender to Olympian expectation nor stubborn rejection of his new reality, pragmatic adaptation instead. His attention immediately focused on the experimental apparatus with evident scientific curiosity. Analyzing design elements with professional assessment rather than divine entitlement. Fascinating integration of metaphysical and physical measurement systems, he observed, directing the comment toward Athena rather than immediately acknowledging Artemis. The calibration architecture suggests quantum entanglement principles applied to divine essence interaction. An astute observation, Athena confirmed. Evident approval in her tone. The measurement system employs modified uncertainty principles applied across multiple reality layers simultaneously. Physical instrumentation captures quantifiable energy exchange while metaphysical algorithms track pattern development beyond conventional perception. The technical discussion continued briefly, establishing clear rapport between scientific minds despite vastly different backgrounds. Artemis observed the interaction with reluctant reassessment. His approach to divinity itself differed fundamentally from previous incarnations. Treating cosmic power as natural phenomenon for understanding rather than inherent entitlement. Eventually, awareness of her silent observation redirected his attention. Azure eyes met veer across laboratory space, divine essence recognizing counterpart despite millennial separation. Lady Artemis, he greeted with formal respect that nonetheless avoided excessive deference. Thank you for agreeing to these experiments. I understand they represent significant compromise given your position regarding prophecy interpretation. The direct acknowledgement of her perspective without dismissal or manipulation represented another departure from previous interactions. Artemis inclined her head slightly, maintaining formal distance while accepting the olive branch it represented. Comprehensive data collection serves everyone's interests regardless of interpretive position, she replied evenly. Understanding cipher behavior may reveal alternatives overlooked during previous cycles. Precisely my hope, he agreed with evident sincerity. Archaeological experience suggests prophecy language often suffers distortion through cultural translation, original cosmic requirements obscured by contemporary interpretive frameworks. The observation aligned unexpectedly with her own long-standing arguments against literal prophecy enforcement, a position previous solar incarnatio NS had dismissed as self-serving resistance rather than legitimate concern. This incarnation not only acknowledged the possibility but actively supported exploration beyond traditional assumptions. Athena reclaimed direction with practiced efficiency, moving them toward experimental protocols with minimal further conversation. Initial baseline requires both ciphers positioned upon calibrated pedestals while bearers maintain physical distance to minimize conscious influence. Observation without interference represents our primary objective during preliminary phase. The arrangement position Artemis and Helios on opposite sides of the central platform, each with clear view of both artifacts but separated by carefully calculated distance. Diana remained near the laboratory in trance, her presence serving dual purpose as security measure and partial lunar aspect capable of detecting anomalies beyond conventional instrumentation. Artemis placed the lunar cipher upon its designated pedestal with deliberate care, momentarily maintaining contact to establish clear intent before withdrawing. Across the platform, Helios mirrored her actions with the solar cipher, though his connection paired less practiced, awakening deities still learning interaction with divine artifacts. The moment both ciphers occupied their positions simultaneously, instrumentation registered immediate response. Silver and golden light pulsed from their surfaces in alternating rhythm, spiral patterns rotating in complementary directions. Geometric projections formed in the space between them, three-dimensional representations of mathematical relationships underlying cosmic architecture. Autonomous synchronization initiating without conscious direction, Athena noted, monitoring multiple data streams simultaneously. Pattern complexity exceeding predicted parameters despite minimal proximity duration. The observation understated visible reality. The ciphers, behavior accelerated beyond gradual synchronization into active communication, information exchange through light patterns that rapidly increased in complexity and speed. Projected geometry evolved from simple platonic solids into fractal structures with dimensional properties exceeding conventional space-time. The resonance pattern matches astronomical progression toward perfect alignment, Helios observed, scientific detachment temporarily overriding divine concern. They're modeling the approaching convergence in symbolic representation. Artemis recognized the pattern with growing unease. The ciphers weren't merely synchronous, but actively calculating, projecting probable outcomes based on current trajectory. The geometric model expanded to incorporate 12 distinct nodes representing all divine ciphers scattered across creation, with alarming voids where several should have appeared. They're confirming what we feared, she realized, divine perception interpreting symbolic representation with perfect clarity. Void Collective has already acquired multiple ciphers from other pantheons. Athena expanded the projection display, allowing more detailed examination of the mathematical model. 5 ciphers are corrupted or controlled by external influence, she confirmed grimly. Their integration into the approaching alignment would fundamentally destabilize reality architecture during vulnerability period. The implications silenced all present momentarily. With 5 divine ciphers under their control, the Void Collective possessed unprecedented advantage during the coming convergence, power suffic. And to potentially succeed in unmaking creation if remaining ciphers failed to establish counterbalance. The synchronization model suggests possible compensation through increased resonance between uncorrupted ciphers, Helios noted. Studying projection details with focused intensity, particularly between complementary pairs with historical connection patterns. The observation directed attention toward the central relationship within the model, the gold-and-silver connection between solar and lunar ciphers pulsing with significantly greater potential than other combinations. Mathematical calculations rendered in symbolic form suggested exponential power amplification through their specific harmonic relationship. The original pairing from creation's foundation, Artemis acknowledged reluctantly. Primary opposition that established fundamental duality from which diversity emerged. Helios glanced toward her with surprised recognition, his fragmented memories apparently lacking this particular cosmic detail despite its fundamental significance. The first division that made subsequent creation possible, he realized, connections forming across awakening consciousness. Day and night, light and darkness, action and reflection, conscious and unconscious, manifest and potential, Artemis continued automatically, ancient knowledge surfacing despite resistance. The eternal cycle through which reality maintains coherence across dimensional boundaries. Their shared recitation created unexpected resonance, divine essence recognizing complementary nature across artificially maintained separation. The ciphers responded immediately, synchronization patterns accelerating as golden and silver light intertwined more completely across intervening space. Geometric projections evolved into representations of celestial mechanics so complex they defied conventional perception, cosmic architecture rendered in symbolic form. Fascinating, Athena murmured, recording furiously across multiple systems. Verbal acknowledgement of complementary function triggers exponential increase in synchronization potential. The connection transcends physical proximity requirements. The observation barely registered as Artemis found herself caught in unexpected perceptual shift. For a disorienting moment, she experienced reality simultaneously through lunar and solar perspective, seeing both reflected light and its original source, understanding both action and its consequence across cosmic distance. The dual perception lasted mere seconds before her conscious resistance reasserted separation. But the experience left unmistakable impression of completion rather than invasion, wholeness temporarily restored rather than autonomy violated. Across the platform, Helios's expression suggested similar experience from opposite perspective, momentary integration followed by return to individual perception. Unlike her reflexive resistance, however, his response reflected wonder rather than rejection, scientific curiosity embracing new understanding rather than defending against perceived threat. That was, he began, searching for adequate description. Temporary perceptual RLAP resulting from harmonic resonance between complementary divine aspects, Artemis supplied clinically, deliberately employing technical language to maintain emotional distance from the experience. A known phenomenon during close proximity between counterpart deities. Her dismissive explanation contradicted internal recognition of the experience's significance, the first direct essence connection between solar and lunar aspects in 3 complete cycles. Previous incarnations would have immediately leveraged the moment to press advantage toward prophecy fulfillment. This Helios instead earned attention to the experimental data with respectful acceptance of her boundary assertion. The resonance created mathematical solutions impossible through isolated calculation. He noted, examining projected models with renewed understanding. Complementary processing rather than mere power amplification, each cipher contributing unique analytical approach to shared problem. Athena expanded the relevant projection with evident intellectual excitement. Precisely. The synchronization doesn't merely increase available power but fundamentally transforms calculation methodology. Problems solvable through linear processing become accessible through complementary approach. The practical implications crystallized simultaneously for all present. The void collective's advantage through multiple corrupted ciphers could potentially be counterbalanced through enhanced synchronization between remaining uncorrupted pairs, particularly the primary solar-lunar connection whose harmonic relationship exceeded all others in foundational significance. Theoretical potential requires practical implementation methodology, Artemis noted, deliberately focusing on technical requirements rather than philosophical implications. Consistent synchronization while maintaining essence separation presents significant design challenges, but not insurmountable ones given what we've observed, Helios countered, indicating specific data patterns in the projection. The resonance achieved mathematical problem solving without requiring complete essence merger. The ciphers established information exchange protocol without compromising individual operational parameters. The scientific framing offered potential compromise path, technical collaboration rather than mystical union, practical partnership rather than symbolic marriage. Artemis found herself considering possibilities previously rejected without examination, perspectives unavailable during interactions with more traditionally divine solar incarnations. Sustained synchronization would require regular proximity under controlled conditions, she acknowledged tentatively. Experimental protocols designed specifically for Informa. Tion exchange while maintaining essence boundary integrity. Exactly, Helios agreed with evident relief at her willingness to consider collaboration. We design technical parameters that satisfy PROPHEC requirements through functional partnership rather than traditional union interpretation. Science offering alternative to conventional mythology. The proposal represented genuine innovation rather than manipulative reframing, approach unavailable during previous cycles when both solar and lunar divinity operated from traditional divine perspective. This incarnation's scientific background created opportunity for methodological revolution, technical solution to cosmic requirement. Athena observed their exchange with poorly concealed satisfaction, her strategy for promoting direct interrogation having produced precisely the intellectual engagement she'd anticipated. Initial results suggest sufficient promise to warrant expanded experimental design, she noted with deliberate understatement. Perhaps with progressive proximity trials to establish optimal synchronization parameters without compromising essence separation. The suggestion represented reasonable next step regardless of personal reservations. Artemis found herself considering practical implementation despite centuries spent rejecting any approach that advanced prophecy fulfillment. If genuine alternative existed, functional synchronization without traditional union, scientific verification required despite political implications. I would be willing to participate in structured trials with clearly established boundaries and comprehensive monitoring. She decided, surprising herself with the concession. Provided all parties acknowledge experimental nature without presumption regarding final implementation. Relief visibly relaxed Helios's posture, genuine rather than triumphant, suggesting sincere concern for consensual participation rather than prophecy enforcement. Absolutely agreed. My interest remains identifying effective countermeasures against void corruption regardless of methodology. If technical synchronization proves viable alternative to traditional interpretation, everyone benefits. The reasonable response further confirmed fundamental difference from previous incarnations, whose approach typically employed manipulation, divine authority, or political pressure to enforce compliance. This Helios sought partnership rather than submission, collaboration toward shared objective rather than prophecy fulfillment for its own sake. Further discussion was abruptly interrupted as warning systems activated throughout the laboratory complex. Proximity alerts flashed across monitoring displays as metaphysical sensors detected reality distortion approaching Olympian boundaries. Diana moved from observation position to combat readiness with fluid grace, her expression shifting to focused concern. Perimeter breach detected in the eastern quadrant, she reported, accessing Olympian defense networks through her communication device. Multiple void manifestations attempting to penetrate outer barriers. Athena immediately secured experimental data while activating additional laboratory protections. Scale and composition. Preliminary reports indicate organized assault rather than random manifestation, Diana replied grimly. Stalker-class entities establishing corruption beachhead with potential avatar support. Quote, the tactical assessment triggered immediate strategic response from all present. Experimental considerations temporarily set aside, divine focus shifted to defensive requirements with practiced efficiency. Athena secured the ciphers within specialized containment fields while Diana coordinated with Olympian defense forces through communication networks. Quote, we should return the ciphers to secure storage until defense protocols confirm threat containment, Artemis decided, reaching for the lunar cipher despite active synchronization still in progress. Moment her fingers contacted silver surface, however, unexpected connection flared across experimental space. The cipher's synchronization with its solar counterpart had progressed further than Visu. All indicators suggested energy pathways established between artifacts transcending physical separation. When she attempted to interrupt the connection, feedback surged through divine essence with disorienting force. Across the platform, Helios experienced simultaneous effect as golden light flared around the solar cipher. Their gazes met across intervening space as unintended consequence manifest. Ed. Perceptual barriers temporarily dissolved through cipher-mediated connection, allowing direct essence communication beyond conscious control. They track the synchronization pattern, * his thought formed directly within her awareness. The attack timing correlates precisely with our experimental progress. *. The observation contained no manipulation or personal agenda, purely tactical assessment based on pattern recognition. Artemis found herself responding through the same connection before conscious reservation could intervene. Corrupted ciphers allowing them to predict harmonization intervals and target accordingly. Her analysis completed his. They seek to prevent effective counterbalance before alignment completes. *. The exchange occurred within microseconds, yet contained complex. Ity impossible through conventional communication. Their complementary cognitive approaches, his intuitive pattern recognition complementing her analytical systematic assessment, combined to produce und. Standing neither could have achieved independently within equivalent timeframe. Physical contact with the ciphers broke as Athena completed containment protocols, severing the direct essence connection. Reality reasserted conventional separation, leaving both deities momentarily disoriented by the abrupt transition. The experience confirmed both synchronization potential and vulnerability at Cr. EDID. Harmonic resonance broadcasting metaphysical signature detectable by sufficiently sensitive entities. The void manifestations are specifically targeting our location within Olympian complex, Artemis informed the others. Translating received understanding into verbal communication. They track cipher synchronization patterns rather than physical positioning. Meaning increased harmonize it. Ion creates proportionally increased detection vulnerability, Helios concluded, completing her thought pattern despite connection termination. Effective countermeasure requires either synchronized activation at last possible moment or progressive harmonization under specialized shielding. Diana accessed additional tactical information through her communications device, expression growing increasingly concerned. Defense forces report unusual coordination among attacking entities, strategic distribution suggesting specific target acquisition protocol rather than general corruption attempt. They seek the ciphers themselves rather than simply preventing synchronization, Athena concluded, securing final containment protocols around the artifacts. A concerning escalation from previous manifestation patterns. Artemis made decisive determination based on tactical assessment rather than personal preference. The ciphers must be separated and relocated to independent secure storage with distinct protection methodologies. Predictable patterns create vulnerability regardless of physical security measures. Agreed, Helios stated without hesitation, prioritizing security above experimental continuation. Different protection approaches provide redundancy against targeting algorithms. I suggest completely distinct methodologies rather than variations on standard protocols. The IR immediate strategic alignment despite previous philosophical differences demonstrated another departure from historical interaction patterns. Previous solar incarnations typically prioritized ECY advancement above tactical considerations, arguing for maintained proximity despite security concerns. This Helios instead placed practical protection above potential synchronization advantages without requiring debate. I'll secure the solar cipher using archaeological methodology modified with divine elements, he suggested. Approaches developed for artifact protection against conventional threats but enhanced for metaphysical application. The unconventional hybrid should create signature confusion within targeting algorithms. The innovative approach represented genuine contribution rather than token participation, practical application of his unique background within divine context. Artemis found herself responding with equivalent collaboration despite long-standing resistance. Hyli employ traditional lunar warding with randomized variation elements to protect the lunar cipher, she completed, divine intuition recognizing complementary approach. Alternating pattern genera. Tion prevents predictive targeting while maintaining essential protection. Athena approved both approaches with evident satisfaction regarding their functional cooperation despite interrupted experimentation. Implementation should proceed immediately while defense forces maintain perimeter engagement. Diana, please coordinate escort security for both transport operations. As they prepared for separate departure with their respective ciphers, Artemis found herself experiencing unexpected reassessment regarding the awakening sun god. This incarnation demonstrated fundamentally different approach to both divinity and prophecy fulfillment, practical problem solving and collaborative engagement rather than traditional divine entitlement. His willingness to prioritize security above synchronization progress suggested genuine concern for cosmic protection rather than merely advancing prophesied union. Not that such reassessment indicated surrender to prophecy requirements, merely acknowledgement. DG meant that effective cooperation remained possible without compromising essential autonomy. Scientific methodology offered potential pathway between stubborn resistance and complete capitulation, technical solution to cosmic dilemma. When their gazes met briefly before departure toward separate security locations, understanding passed between them without requiring cipher-mediated connection. The void entity's response to mere experimental synchronization confirmed the prophecy's functional significance regardless of preferred interpretation. Effective countermeasure against creation's unmatching required some form of solar-lunar harmonization despite personal reservations. The approaching convergence would accept nothing less. Chapter 2 and Chapter 3, Pantheon Politics. The summit O.F. Mount Olympus existed in perpetual twilight, neither fully part of the mortal realm nor entirely separate from it. Clouds drifted through ancient columns rather than around them, while distant stars remained visible despite golden sunlight bathing marble surfaces. Physics bent gracefully around divine architecture, accommodating immortal preferences with elegant compromise rather than complete surrender. Helios paused at the grand entrance to the Pantheon Council chambers, momentarily overwhelmed by the symbolic weight of the threshold. Beyond those celestial bronze doors, representatives Fr. Every major divine system awaited, immortals who had witnessed civilizations rise and fall, who had shaped humanity's spiritual evolution across millennia. 3 days ago, he'd been a respected archaeologist with unconventional theories about ancient sun worship. Now he stood as the awakening solar deity preparing to reclaim his place among cosmic powers. Having second thoughts? Diana asked, materializing beside him with characteristic silent grace. She'd exchanged her tactical attire for formal Amazonian regalia, silver armor intricately engraved with lunar symbols over a deep blue chiton that shifted like twilight shadows with each movement. Not exactly second thoughts, Helios replied, adjusting the golden laurel circlet that felt simultaneously foreign and familiar against his temples. More like 47th thoughts, all contradicting each other. The formal attire she'd provided, a luminous white himation over golden tunic that responded to his movements with subtle radia. NCE, felt unexpectedly natural despite its ceremonial appearance. His body remembered protocols his conscious mind hadn't yet recovered. Diana's smile carried understanding accumulated across centuries. The transition between mortal perspective and divine awareness is never simple. Previous incarnations typically surrendered human identity completely upon awakening. Your integration approach proves significantly more interesting. You mean complicated, he corrected wryly. That too. Her expression grew more serious as she gestured toward the massive doors. The Pantheon Council convenes arly, only when circumstances affect multiple divine systems simultaneously. Your awakening coinciding with the 7-cycle alignment has triggered something approaching cosmic panic. Reassuring. It wasn't meant to be. Diana's directness remained refreshing amid divine diplomatic layers. Many present will view you as either salvation or catastrophe incarnate, depending on their interpretation of approaching cosmic events. Few will see you as an individual navigating unprecedented transition. Helios absorbed this with scientific detachment despite personal implications. Objectivity seems unreasonable to expect from beings who've witnessed previous cycles firsthand. Their historical data points inevitably influence prediction models. Her expression flickered with something like surprise before settling into appreciation. Your analytical framework provides unique advantage your previous incarnations lacked. Perhaps precisely what this particular cycle requires. Before he could respond, the massive doors began opening inward, moving with impossible silence despite their astronomical weight. No visible mechanism controlled their movement, reality simply reconfiguring according to divine expectation. Ready or not, Diana murmured, assuming formal posture. Mostly not, Helios replied under his breath, straightening his shoulders as golden light from within the chamber spilled across the threshold. The Pantheon Council chamber defied conventional architectural understanding, its dimensions expanding beyond Euclidean limitations while maintaining perfect proportional harmony. 12 primary pillars of different materials and designs supported a domed ceiling that simultaneously displayed all known constellations regardless of hemisphere or season. Between these structural elements, smaller columns created galleries where minor deities and divine representatives observed proceedings with varying degrees of interest or concern. At the chamber's center, a circular arrangement of thrones created the primary discussion arena. Unlike Olympian-specific gatherings where hierarchical positioning dominated, the Pantheon Council operated through balanced representation. Each major divine system allocated equal space regardless of current worship levels or historical prominence. Helios noted distinct groupings as Diana guided him forward: Greek-Roman configurations near the eastern quadrant, Egyptian representatives maintaining dignified presence to the south, Norse contingent clustered with characteristic warrior bearing to the north, Hindu representatives bringing vibrant energy to their western section, while smaller but equally significant pantheons, Japanese, Aztec, Celtic, Chinese, occupied positions between the major groupings. What struck him most profoundly wasn't their diverse appearances but the layered reality they occupied. Each deity simultaneously manifested cultural representations spanning their entire worship history, Egyptian gods displaying both ancient and modern aspects concurrently, Norse deities simultaneously battle-scarred warriors and contemporary interpretations, Hindu representatives existing in both traditional and reformed manifestations. Reality accommodated all perspectives simultaneously, allowing observers to perceive aspects most comprehensible to their individual understanding. Their arrival silenced on discussions as divine attention focused with uncomfortable intensity upon the newly awakened solar deity. Helios felt their assessment as physical pressure against his awakening essence, centuries of experience evaluating his potential significance within approaching cosmic events. Zeus rose from the Olympian section, his form manifesting perfect balance between ancient king and modern authority figure. Representatives of the divine realms, I present Helios Uzumaki, solar harbinger of the seventh cycle, awakened through conjunction with the solar cipher. The formal introduction trigger, immediate response, murmured conversations in languages predating human civilization, subtle power adjustments as deities recalibrated cosmic positioning, evaluative glances exchanging centuries of context through momentary eye contact. From the Egyptian section, a figure of impossible dignity stepped forward, simultaneously falcon-headed deity and regal human king, his solar crown radiating authority that transcended cultural boundaries. Ra welcomes the return of solar essence to active participation in cosmic maintenance, he intoned, voice carrying harmonic overtones beyond conventional hearing. Though questions remain regarding timing and methodology of awakening. Before Helios could formulate appropriate response to the ancient solar deity, movement from the Japanese section drew collective attention. A woman of ethereal beauty glided forward, her traditional kimono seemingly composed of living shadows and moonlight. Where Diana's lunar aspect manifested as warrior's strength, and Artemis embodied wilderness sovereignty, this figure represented night's mysterious seduction, dreams and illusions given divine form. Tsukuyomi finds the coincidental nature of this awakening suspiciously convenient, she observed. Voice melodic yet carrying undercurrents of ancient power. Unlike most present who employed first-person reference, she maintained traditional third-person address despite modern context. The cycle turns precisely when cosmic architecture appears most vulnerable. One might question whether manipulation exceeds coincidence. The accusation hung in perfect diplomatic balance. Neither direct challenge nor innocent observation, political maneuver disguised as casual comment. Helios recognized the technique from academic conferences where senior professors undermined junior colleagues through carefully calibrated questions. Diana tensed subtly beside him, clearly measuring appropriate response against political consequences. Before she could intervene, however, Helios stepped forward with decision born from scientific rather than divine protocol. Valid methodological questions, he acknowledged directly, meeting Tsukuyomi's midnight gaze without flinching. Correlation alone doesn't establish causation, and timing deserves rigorous examination. My perspective remains limited by fragmented divine memory, but I welcome empirical investigation rather than assumption from any quarter. His response, neither defensive denial nor political counterattack, momentarily disrupted expected protocol. Several elder deities exchanged evaluative glances, reassessing the awakening sun god based on his unusual approach. From the Norse section, a one-eyed figure leaned forward with sudden interest, his raven companions shifting on armored shoulders. He sun returns with scholar's tongue rather than warrior's roar, Odin observed, ancient wisdom gleaming in his remaining eye. Perhaps prophecy accounts for changing times more precisely than we credited. Or perhaps incomplete awakening presents incomplete deity, countered a serpentine voice from the Aztec section, where Quetzalcoatl's feathered form shimmered between divine manifestation and symbolic representation. The council requires confirmation of authentic solar essence rather than mere cipher activation. Previous false harbingers have occurred. The reasonable concern shifted discussion toward formal verification rather than political positioning, a development Helios welcomed despite implications. Scientific methodology demanded evidence over assertion regardless of subject matter. Zeus reclaimed procedural authority with practiced diplomatic skill. The awakening remains in progress, as all present can observe through essence evaluation. Traditional confirmation protoc. Ols seem appropriate given unusual awakening circumstances and approaching convergence timeline. Agreement rippled through divine representatives with surprising consensus. Helios glanced questioningly toward Diana, whose expression revealed resigned acceptance rather than concern. Confirmation protocols, he asked quietly. Divine trials to verify authentic solar essence beyond potential manipulation, she explained in undertone. Standard procedure when deity returns through unusual circumstances or after extended absence. Particularly important given your critical role in approaching cosmic events. Before he could request elaboration, Zeus continued with formal declaration. The council proposes threefold verification through essence challenge, memory restoration, and power demonstration. Traditional moderators from neutral pantheons shall oversee proceedings to ensure balanced evaluation. The methodical approach appealed to Helios's scientific sensibilities despite obvious personal risk. Empirical verification provided stronger foundation than mere assertion, particularly when cosmic consequences hinged on accurate identification. I accept the protocols, he stated. For Diana could offer advice or caution. Verification serves everyone's interests given significance of approaching events. His ready acceptance appeared to surprise several elder deities who had, perhaps, expected resistance or negotiation. Odin's expression revealed particular appreciation for pragmatic approach over divine pride, practical wisdom recognizing efficiency. From her observation position in the Olympian section, Artemis studied the interaction with carefully neutral expression. Unlike Diana, who had accompanied Helios as formal guide, the lunar prime maintained deliberate distance from proceedings, political statement through spatial positioning rather than verbal declaration. The trials shall commence at tomorrow's twilight, Zeus announced, concluding initial introduction with practiced efficiency. Until then, the solar harbinger shall be afforded appropriate accommodation within neutral territory to prevent undue influence from any pantheon representatives. The diplomatic restriction carried clear subtext, limiting interaction with either lunar deity before verification completed. Council concerns about prophecy manipulation extended beyond void entities to include potential maneuvering by established pantheons seeking advantage during approaching convergence. As formal session concluded and divine representatives dispersed toward individual discussions, Diana guided Helios toward assigned quarters with measured pace that allowed private conversation without appearing secretive. You continue surprising divine expectations, she observed quietly. Returning deities resist verification protocols as beneath their dignity. Scientific method demands empirical verification, he replied simply. If these protocols help establish authentic identification beyond reasonable doubt, they serve my interests as much as the council's. Her expression revealed renewed appreciation for his unique perspective. Your approach continues diverging from previous incarnations in refreshing ways. Though I should warn you, divine trials typically involve significant discomfort despite immortal status. Meaning they hurt. Quite spectacularly, she confirmed with unexpected candidness. Verification requires testing essence under duress to prevent falsification. Pain remains an effective authenticator across divine systems. Helios absorbed this information with resigned acceptance. Another area where scientific and divine methodologies align unexpectedly. Legitimate verification requires testing under adverse conditions. Their path took them through less formal sections of the Olympian complex, transitional spaces where divine architecture relaxed its imposing formality in favor of functional beauty. Gardens featuring impossible botan, icals stretched between administrative structures, while minor deities and immortal attendants moved purposefully through interconnected courtyards. The neutral accommodation is actually quite pleasant, Diana assured him as they approached a structure of white marble whose architectural style incorporated elements from multiple cultural traditions. The Garden of Convergence exists specifically for diplomatic visitors requiring Pantheon-neutral territory. The building featured open-air design that permitted natural elements to flow unrestricted through living spaces, conceptual complement to its diplomatic function facilitating free exchange between typically separate divine systems. Within its central courtyard, vegetation from every global region coexisted in harmonious arrangement. That should have been biologically impossible. Appropriate symbolism, Helios noted, recognizing intentional design elements. Convergence representation through biological cooperation despite natural separation. Divine architecture frequently employs living metaphor, Diana confirmed. This particular space dates from the third cycle convergence, one of few structures that survived reality res. Structuring during subsequent alignment events. The historical context reminded Helios of fundamental gaps in his cosmic understanding, memories still fragmented despite accelerating awakening. His archaeological expertise provided framework for analyzing divine politics but lacked specific historical details regarding previous convergence cycles. How many remember previous 7-cycle alignments firsthand? He asked. Calculating millennium-scale timeframes. Very few maintain continuous existence across multiple reality restructurings, Diana replied thoughtfully. Most elder deities experience essence reformation between major cycles, continuity through transformation rather than uninterrupted consciousness. Odin, perhaps, certain aspects of Hindu representation. Among Olympians, only Zeus retained coherent memory through the 4th cycle restructuring. The information contextualized political dynamics he'd observed during council introduction. Without direct memory of previous alignment consequences, most divine representatives operated from theoretical understanding rather than experiential knowledge, their concerns about potential outcomes based on recorded history rather than personal recollection. Not unlike his current circumstance with fragmented divine memory. As they reached his assigned quarters, an elegant suite featuring both Greek and Egyptian architectural elements, Diana paused at the threshold with uncharacteristic hesitation. The verification protocols begin at twilight tomorrow, but preparation should start immediately, she advised. Meditation FOC, used on solar essence integration helps stabilize awakening patterns before external challenge. Helios recognized unspoken concern beneath professional guidance. You're worried about the trials. Her expression revealed momentary vulnerability before diplomatic composure reasserted itself. Your awakening proceeds differently than previous cycles. Integration rather than replacement creates unique variables difficult to predict. Traditional protocols assume conventional divine consciousness rather than hybrid perspective. You think I might fail verification. I think verification Ned for traditional divinity might misinterpret innovative manifestation, she clarified carefully. Your greatest strength. Integrated perspective combining human experience with divine essence, Presson. TS greatest challenge within conventional evaluation frameworks. The assessment resonated with his own concerns despite confident acceptance before the council. Scientific verification depended rely on appropriate testing methodology. Innovative subjects required adaptive protocols rather than standardized approaches. Can the trials be modified to accommodate unconventional awakening patterns? He asked practically. Traditionally, no, but Diana hesitated, diplomatic caution briefly yielding to personal concern. I've requested Athena's involvement as technical consultant during protocol development. Her analytical approach might introduce methodological flexibility while maintaining verification integrity. The thoughtful intervention demonstrated genuine investment beyond political calculation, personal consideration rather than merely strategic positioning. Something within Helios responded to this evidence of authentic connection, solar essence recognizing complementary nature across artificial separation. Thank you, he said simply, meeting her gaze directly. For a moment, Formality dissolved between them, a mortal diplomat and awakening deity replaced by two-eyed individuals navigating complex circumstances with tentative trust. Diana's expression softened with emotion that transcended political calculation. "Rest well," she advised, momentarily touching his arm, in gesture that conveyed support beyond professional guidance. "Your scientific foundation provides advantages previous incarnations lacked. Trust that perspective during tomorrow's challenges." With that final counsel, she departed, silver armor catching sunset light as she moved gracefully through the garden toward Olympian territory. Helios watched her disappear among impossible botanicals, struck by unexpected complexity of emotion her presence evoked. Beyond political alliance or prophetic connection, genuine rapport had developed between them, mutual respect forming foundation for whatever relationship might eventually emerge. Left alone in neutral territory, Helios turned attention to practical preparation despite limited information regarding specific trial components. Diana's suggestion of meditative integration seemed reasonable starting point regardless of verification methodology. Finding comfortable position within the suite's central meditation space, a circular area featuring inlaid solar symbols from various cultural traditions, he closed his eyes and focused awareness on the golden energy steadily increasing within his consciousness. The awakening process had accelerated significantly since initial cipher contact, solar essence integrating with his human identity rather than supplanting it as apparently occurred during previous incarnations. Memories continued, surfacing in nonlinear progression, fragments of divine existence interspersing with his human experiences to create unprecedented perspective incorporating both viewpoints simultaneously. As meditation deepened, chronological barriers dissolved further, allowing clearer access to solar knowledge accumulated across cycles. Celestial mechanics revealed themselves with mathematical precision, planetary movements, stellar life cycles, gravitational interactions governing cosmic architecture. Scientific understanding acquired through human education merged seamlessly with divine perception, creating a comprehensive framework transcending either individual perspective. Time passed differently within meditative state, external reality receding as internal integration progressed. Helios explored solar essence with methodical thoroughness, cataloging capabilities and limitations with scientific detachment despite personal implications. Power manifested differently than his limited divine NCE had suggested, not merely external energy manipulation but fundamental reality interaction operating through mathematical principles underlying creation itself. The sun represented more than mere stellar object or symbolic representation, its physical manifestation anchored metaphysical concepts providing foundational structure for reality across multiple dimensions. Light, growth, revelation, transformation, conceptual forces channeled through physical medium to maintain cosmic stability across realms. His connection with these principles strengthened through focused attention, awakening Zens responding to conscious acknowledgement rather than remaining instinctive background process. Scientific framework provided unexpected advantage during integration, analytical methodology allowan. Systematic exploration rather than overwhelming immersion. How long this internal process continued, Helios couldn't determine with certainty. Awareness of external reality returned gradually as golden light touched his closed eyelids. Not meditation visualization but actual illumination from unexpected source. Opening his eyes, he discovered he wasn't alone. A woman stood before him, her form composed entirely of living sunlight, radiance given humanoid shape without physical substance. Unlike conventional divine manifestations that maintained consistent appearance, this figure shifted continuously between representations spanning human history, prehistoric sun goddess, Egyptian solar deity, Greek charioteer, and countless other cultural interpretations flowing seamlessly between forms. "You integrate rather than surrender," she observed, her voice harmonizing across multiple tonal registers simultaneously. Unexpected approach to awakening after so many conventional cycles. Helios rose slowly, recognizing cosmic significance beyond standard divine interaction. "You're not simply another deity." Accurate assessment. Amusement-colored harmonized tones. "I represent solar principle rather than specific divine interpretation, the conceptual foundation from which individual manifestations derive form and function." The distinction carried profound implications regarding cosmic architecture. Beyond personified deities recognizable through cultural representations existed fundamental principles underlying reality's basic structure, conceptual forces typically beyond direct interaction with individual consciousness. Why appear now? Helios asked, scientific curiosity overriding potential reverence. Precisely because you asked. Why? Rather than offering worship or demanding power, she replied. Approval evident in harmonic tones. Previous incarnations sought immediate restoration without questioning purpose or method. Your integrated approach creates opportunity. Why for conscious choice rather than automatic pattern repetition? The observation aligned with Diana's comments regarding his unconventional awakening process. Choice regarding what specifically? How solar principle manifests during seventh convergence. Her form shifted through additional representations, modern scientific illustrations, quantum physics visualizations, conceptual art depicting energy transformation. Previous cycles maintained separation between complementary forces through division of representative vessels. This approach proved temporarily effective but ultimately unsustainable across multiple restructuring events. Scientific implications crystallized immediately. System entropy increases with each cycle despite temporary stabilization through oppositional balance. Precisely. Her approval manifested as intensified radiance. Cosmic architecture requires fundamental recalibration during seventh convergence to prevent terminal entropy acceleration. Traditio. Null approach through separated representatives cannot achieve necessary restructuring. The information contextualized prophetic emphasis on union between solar and lunar principles, functional requirement rather than merely symbolic representation. The prophecy describes mechanism for entropy reversal rather than simply void containment, Helios realized, connecting fragmentary information through scientific framework. Your integrated consciousness perceives connections conventional divine awareness typically overlooks, the solar principle confirmed. Neither fully human nor traditionally divine. You bridge conceptual categories through simultaneous perspective. Before Helios could request crucial clarification regarding specific implementation requirements, reality shifted subtly around them, external influence attempting to interrupt their interaction. The solar principle's manifestation flickered momentarily before restabilizing with concentrated effort. Our direct communication violates traditional protocol, she acknowledged, her harmonized voice becoming increasingly difficult to maintain. The verification trials approach with accelerated timeline due to unexpected principal intervention. Remember, integration rather than opposition creates sustainable solution across convergence restructuring. With that cryptic final guidance, her manifestation dissolved into golden particles that briefly swirled around Helios before absorbing into his awakening essence, knowledge integration rather than separate memory. The experience left him simultaneously energized and disoriented. Fundamental understanding expanded beyond conventional divine perspective. Reality reasserted standard parameters as the suite's entrance reconfigured to admit visitors without announcement. Divine architecture responding to authority override rather than resident preference. Three figures entered with ceremonial formality, Athena representing Olympian interests, Bast from Egyptian pantheon, and Frigg carrying Norse authority. Their combined presence represented balanced oversight committee for verification protocols. The solar harbinger will accompany us for preliminary evaluation, Athena stated without preamble. Her gray eyes assessing him with analytical precision that noted recent energy fluctuation without commenting directly. Council protocols have been accelerated due to unusual essence activity detected within neutral territory. The diplomatic phrasing acknowledged his interaction with solar principle without specifically identifying its nature, political cower. Tessie maintaining plausible deniability regarding protocol violation. Helios appreciated the tactical consideration while recognizing implied warning regarding increased scrutiny during upcoming trials. Of course, he agreed. Rising with dignity despite internal adjustment still processing principal interaction. I welcome thorough evaluation given approaching convergence requirements. Bast's F. A lean eyes narrowed slightly at his ready compliance, calculating possible motivations behind cooperative attitude. Unlike her full animal manifestation in ancient representations, her current form maintained primarily human appearance with subtle feline characteristics, elegance suggesting predatory capability beneath civilized exterior. Unusual enthusiasm for potentially uncomfortable process, she noted. Voice carrying musical quality reminiscent of ceremonial sistrum instruments. Previous solar manifestations typically emphasized dignity above verification. Previous manifestations lack scientific background emphasizing empirical methodology, Helios replied honestly. Verification through testing represents fundamental principle regardless of subject matter. Frigg's ancient EYs evaluated him with maternal wisdom transcending cultural boundaries. Truth spoken without calculation, she observed with mild surprise. Perhaps prophecy specifies unusual vessel for specific pure pose rather than mere cyclical repetition. The assessment carried weight beyond casual observation. Norse connection with fates weaving providing unique perspective regarding prophecy mechanisms. Before Helios could inquire further, Athena reclaimed procedural direction with practiced efficiency. The initial evaluation occurs in the neutral crucible rather than pantheon-specific territory, Shish. Explained as they departed the diplomatic residence. All verification components will be witnessed by balanced representation from major divine systems to ensure protocol integrity. Their path led deeper into Olympian complex than previous tours had permitted, transitioning from public spaces to increasingly secure areas where reality manipulation occurred with greater freedom from mortal observation concerns. Architecture shifted from recognizable classical elements toward abstract representations of mathematical principles underlying divine operations, physical manifestation of conceptua. Frameworks rather than merely symbolic decoration. The neutral crucible occupied intersection point between major divine territories, space claimed equally by all pantheons while belonging exclusively to none. Its entrance featured simultaneously open archway and sealed barrier depending on observer perspective and approach authorization. For their particular group, reality reconfigured to permit immediate access without conventional transition. Within the crucible, space expanded beyond Euclidean limitations while maintaining precise geometric harmony, perfect sphere containing smaller int. Connected chambers arranged in dodecahedral pattern. Each segment featured distinctive elemental characteristics representing different aspects of divine verification. Fire chamber pulsing with purifying flame. Water basin reflecting multiple realities simultaneously. Earth section constantly restructuring mineral compositions. Air region where gaseous elements formed complex mathematical equations before dissolving and reforming. At the structure's center floated a crystalline platform accessible from any chamber through reality reconfiguration rather than physical movement. Upon this stage, stood representatives from every major pantheon, their positions arranged to maintain perfect balance between competing divine influences. Among them, Helios noted both lunar deities maintaining form. Distance. Artemis positioned within Greek representation while Diana occupied unique space between pantheons reflecting her hybrid divine nature. Odin stepped forward as primary moderator, his wisdom and relatively neutral position regarding solar-lunar prophecy making him appropriate overseer. The verification of divine essence follows protocols established during second convergence cycle, he explained. Voice carrying authority earned through personal sacrifice rather than merely positional power. 3 challenges shall determine authenticity. Essence evaluation through elemental exposure. Memory access through temporal immersion, and power demonstration through manifested opposition. The methodical approach matched scientific verification principles despite mystical terminology, baseline establishment, historical verification, and functional demonstration forming comprehensive evaluation framework. Helios appreciated the structured methodology despite understanding each component would involve significant discomfort based on Diana's warning. The challenges may be attempted in any order according to candidate preference, Odin continued, offering minimal procedural flexibility within rigid framework. Success requires satisfaction of council representatives through objective demonstration rather than subjective interpretation. Decision required tactical cons. Iteration regarding energy management and psychological positioning. Logic suggested beginning with least depleting challenge to establish positive evaluation momentum, but without specific information regarding relative difficulty. Optimal sequencing remained uncertain. I'll begin with essence evaluation, Helios decided after brief consideration. Elemental exposure seemed most straightforward. Verification method based on description, establishing baseline identity before attempting more complex challenges involving memory or power manipulation. Odin acknowledged the choice with minimal gesture, signaling the fire chamber's activation. Reality reconfigured around Helios, transitioning him from central platform to elemental testing space without conventional movement. The chamber's dimensions expanded upon his arrival. Walls composed of continuously flowing lava patterns that generated intense heat without conventional temperature limitations. Divine essence verification through elemental purification. Intoned Hephaestus from observation position outside the chamber, his expertise with transformative fire making him appropriate evaluator. Solar authenticity demonstrated through GH resistance to consuming flame and appropriate elemental resonance patterns. Without further ceremonial delay, fire erupted from all surfaces simultaneously, not conventional combustion but purifier. Flame designed specifically to test divine essence against false manifestation. Heat beyond mortal comprehension engulfed Helios completely, reality itself becoming transformative element rather than merely physical experience. Pain transcended conventional nervous system as fire interacted directly with awakening solar essence, testing authenticity through fundamental principles rather than merely physical resistance. Human identity would have surrendered immediately to such overwhelming force. Divine manifestation without authentic connection would have revealed inconsistencies under purifying exposure. Helios experienced dismantling and reconstitution simultaneously, elemental fire separating component aspects of his being while authentic solar essence naturally resisted complete dissolution. Scientific understanding provided unexpected advantage during overwhelming experience, analytical framework allowing observation of transformative process rather than merely experiencing its effects. From outside perspective, divine observers witnessed his form become temporarily translucent as purifying flame revealed underlying essence structure, golden energy maintaining coherent path. RN despite intense deconstruction pressure. Unlike conventional divine manifestation that would have demonstrated consistent resistance, his integrated nature revealed unique response pattern, human as PECTS temporarily yielding while solar essence provided regenerative foundation. The evaluation continued longer than protocol typically required, extended examination revealing unconventional integra. Cheon between mortal identity and divine principle. Hephaestus observed with increasing interest as transformation stabilized into unprecedented pattern, neither complete surrender nor absolute resistance. CE but adaptive integration establishing new equilibrium state. Sufficient, the Forge God finally announced, signaling challenge completion. Fire receded gradually rather than vanishing instantly, allowing stabilized integration to readjust to conventional reality parameters. When transformation completed, Helios remained standing, his appearance superficially unchanged yet demonstrating subtle differences visible to divine perception. Golden energy flowed more visibly beneath physical form, solar essence having advanced significantly through purification challenge. Reality reconfigured once more, returning him to central platform where divine representatives observed with varied expressions, curiosity, concern, calculation or appreciation depending on individual perspective regarding his unconventional response pattern. Elemental verification confirms authentic solar essence with unexpected integration characteristics, Hephaestus reported formally. Neither conventional manifestation nor fraudulent representation but legitimate innovation within established paradigm. The assessment satisfied verification requirements while acknowledging unprecedented nature of his awakening. G process. Scientific validation of Diana's earlier observations regarding his unique manifestation approach. Several elder deities exchanged significant glances, re-evaluating prophecy implications based on demonstrated evidence. Odin acknowledged the successful completion with respectful nod. The council accepts elemental verification. The candidate may proceed to second challenge selection. P. Physiological assessment suggested moderate essence depletion despite successful completion, energy expenditure higher than anticipated during supposedly straightforward challenge. Strategic reconsider. Cheon seemed appropriate given demonstrated intensity. Memory access through temporal immersion, Helios selected, prioritizing knowledge acquisition over power demonstration given his still fragmentary divine memories. The challenge would prove difficult but potentially provided crucial information needed for final verification component. The selection triggered reconfiguration of water basin C. Hamber, reality shifting to accommodate specialized verification requirements. Unlike fire challenge occurring within observable space, memory verification required private cognitive environment while maintaining external monitoring capacity. The solution manifested as crystalline chamber containing liquid neither conventionally water nor purely conceptual, temporal medium allowing consciousness to access previous existence patterns while physical form remained present for evaluation. Mnemosyne stepped forward from Greek representation, memory goddess providing appropriate expertise for verification oversight. Authentic divine essence maintains connection with previous manifestations across cycles, she explained, her voice flowing between languages as easily as water adapts to containing vessels. Temporal immersion reveals continuity patterns confirming identity through characteristic response to significant historical events. The methodology matched cognitive archaeology principles. Despite mystical implementation, identity verification through documented historical interaction rather than merely claimed connection. Scientific validity reinforced Helios's confidence despite obvious vulnerability during consciousness projection into previous existence patterns. The candidate will experience 3 significant convergence points from previous cycles, Mnemosyne continued, establishing protocol parameters. Authentic response patterns must demonstrate consistent solar essence characteristics despite contextual variation. Without further preparation, Helios found himself G-uided into the temporal medium, his consciousness separating from physical form as liquid enveloped him completely. Initially disorienting transition stabilized as scientific mind established observational framework despite unusual perceptual conditions. Reality dissolved and reformed around his awareness, not merely visual representation but complete sensory immersion in previous existence pattern. The first convergence materialized with overwhelming clarity, reality itself still malleable as fundamental principles established initial parametric boundaries. He experienced existence as pure soul. AR principle before individual manifestation developed, consciousness without physical form, purpose without personality, function without individual identity. Around this essential solar aspect swirl other primal forces establishing preliminary relationship patterns, lunar reflection, terrestrial stability, atmospheric protection, all developing initial interaction protocols that would eventually become natural laws. The void existed differently then, not opposing force but complementary aspect providing necessary contrast through which definition became possible. Boundaries between existence and non-existence remained permeable, reality establishing itself through continuous negotiation rather than fixed delineation. Within this primordial context, solar principle assumed responsibility for energy distribution, transformation facilitation, and illumination provision, cosmic functions requiring focused intention rather than merely physical processes. The first convergence established He's foundational relationships through conceptual agreement rather than imposed structure. Temporal immersion shifted abruptly, consciousness transitioning between nonlinear connection points then following chronological progression. The third convergence materialized with different existential parameters, reality having developed significant complexity through previous restructuring events. This period featured early divine manifestation through cultural interpretation, consciousness experiencing existence as recognized deity rather than abstract principle. Helios perceived himself driving golden chariot across celestial vault, physical representation allowing interaction with developing mortal consciousness through comprehensible symbolism. The convergence crisis centered around competing divine systems attempting to establish hierarchical dominance rather than cooperative balance, power concentration threatening cosmic stability through uneven distribution. Solar manifestat. Ions across multiple pantheons experienced simultaneous pressure toward unification under singular representation rather than diverse cultural interpretation. His response during this critical juncture revealed core essence characteristic, advocacy for diversified representation rather than centralized authority. The position maintained cosmic balance while honoring cultural variation, functional through adaptive distribution rather than imposed standardization. Memory verification shifted once more, consciousness projecting forward to fifth convergence, recent enough that individual identity had developed significant complexity while maintaining essential solar function. This period featured explicit conflict between preservation and transformation forces as cosmic architecture developed. Increasing entropy patterns requiring fundamental recalibration. Lunar and solar representatives experienced significant relationship evolution during this convergence. Cooperative functionality eloping beyond merely mechanical opposition toward complementary partnership. Personal connection formed between representative vessels rather than simply conceptual principles, creating foundation foe. Are eventually controversial prophecy regarding seventh convergence requirements. Throughout temporal immersion, observing divine representatives monitored response patterns through crystalline chamber. Essence characteristics remaining consistent despite contextual variation across convergence points. Mnemosyne evaluated specific reactions against historical record, verification focusing on authentic. IC pattern recognition rather than merely factual recall. When consciousness returned to present manifestation, Helios integrated expanded memory access with current understanding, significant NOLD. GE gaps filled through direct temporal connection rather than merely fragmentary recollection. The experience provided crucial context regarding prophecy development and his historical relationship with lunar aspects across multiple manifestations. Mnemosyne observed his reintegration with professional assessment rather than emotional engagement. Memory verification confirms authentic connection with previous solar manifestations despite unconventional awakening methodology. Response patterns demonstrate consistent essence characteristics across convergence points with appropriate contextual adaptation. The formal confirmation satisfied protocol requirements while Helios processed significant implications from newly accessible memories, particularly regarding his historical relationship with Artemis across multiple cycles and the prophecy's actual development context. Understanding evolved beyond fragmentary impression toward comprehensive appreciation of complex circumstances leading toward current convergence crisis. Odin acknowledged successful completion with increased respect evident in his ancient gaze. The Council accepts memory verification. The candidate may proceed to final challenge when prepared. The temporal immersion had required minimal physical energy while providing maximum informational benefit, strategic selection validated through practical outcome. Lee power demonstration remained for complete verification, though newly integrated memories suggested this final challenge would prove most demanding despite improved understanding. I'll proceed with power demonstration, Helios decided, prioritizing completion while verification momentum remained positive. The selection triggered reconfiguration toward air chamber, space design specifically F. Or energy manipulation without risking broader environmental consequences. Unlike previous challenges occurring within observable parameters, power verification required active opposition to a curatal. Why measure capability parameters and control characteristics? Zeus himself stepped forward as appropriate evaluator, his mastery of energy manipulation providing necessary expertise for accurate assessment. Authentic divine essence demonstrates consistent manifestation patterns under opposition pressure, he explained, establishing verification parameters. Power verification requires appropriate response to increasing resistance while maintaining characteristic energy signature. The methodology matched stress testing principles from engineering disciplines, systematic pressure application revealing structural integrity and functional limitations through controlled challenge rather than catastrophic failure. Scientific validity reinforced confidence despite obvious physical demands following previous verification components. Without ceremonial delay, Zeus initiated the challenge with focused energy projection, lightning manifestation directed with precise control toward Helios's position. The attack represented calibrated testing force rather than genuine combat intention, though consequences remained significant regardless of motivation. Drawing upon newly integrated knowledge and awakening solar essence, Helios responded instinctively yet consciously, golden energy manifesting as protective field rather than merely oppositional force. The defensive approach demonstrated characteristic solar methodology, illumination revealing underlying pattern rather than simply countering visible manifestation. Zeus increased challenge intensity methodically, energy projections evolving. From simple lightning manifestation toward complex atmospheric manipulation. Storm systems generating multi-layered attack patterns requiring sophisticated response rather than merely increased power application. Throughout escalating exchange, divine representatives observed characteristic methodologies revealing authentic essence identity beyond merely physical capability. Solar response pattern. NS emphasized transformation over opposition, converting incoming energy toward constructive application rather than merely neutralizing hostile force. The approach demonstrated fundamental solar funct. Ion within cosmic ecology. recycling rather than merely resisting, illuminating rather than simply overpowering. As verification progressed toward completion, Zeus initiated final evaluation component. Coordinated opposition from multiple energy sources simultaneously. The challenge required comprehensive response demonstrating essence characteristic under maximum pressure conditions, authentic Iden. Chitty revealed through instinctive methodology rather than merely conscious technique. Drawing upon fully awakened solar understanding, Helios manifested characteristic response transcending conventio. Null opposition. Radiance expanding outward in perfectly controlled sphere that transformed incoming energies rather than simply blocking their effects. The demonstration revealed fundamental solar NCE function beyond merely symbolic representation, cosmic principle operating through individual vessel while maintaining characteristic methodology. When verification completed, silence held momenta. Riley as divine representatives processed demonstrated evidence. Unlike conventional returning deity following traditional manifestation pattern, Helios had demonstrated authentic solar essence operative. Through innovative integration methodology, prophecy fulfillment potential operating beyond conventional expectations. Power verification confirms authentic solar essence with characteristic transformation methodology. Zeus announced formally. The Council acknowledges successful completion of verification protocols and recognizes Helios Uzumaki as legitimate solar harbinger for 7th convergence cycle. The official confirmation established his position beyond questioning regardless of unconventional awakening methodology. Divine representatives acknowledged verification outcome with varying responses, respect, concern, calculation or anticipation depending on individual perspective regarding prophecy implications. As formal verification concluded, reality reconfigured once more, turning participants to Pantheon Council chamber for official recognition ceremony. The proceedings followed ancient protocol while accommodating contemporary context. Divine traditions maintained adaptive implementation rather than rigid repetition. Zeus presented formal acknowledgement through traditional symbolism, golden laurel permanently replacing temporary circlet, officially recognized. Xing divine status beyond merely awakening potential. The Pantheon Council acknowledges Helios Uzumaki as legitimate solar harbinger for 7th convergence cycle, with all rights and responsibilities accompanying position. The ceremony established official standing within divine hierarchy while political implications remained deliberately unstated, formal recognition without explicitly endorsing particular prophecy interpretation. Diplomatic ambiguity maintained operational flexibility while satisfying protocol requirements. As representatives dispersed following official ceremony, Helios found himself approached by Tsukuyomi, Japanese lunar deity maintaining deliberate separation from her Greek and Roman counterparts despite shared essential aspect. Her midnight eyes evaluated him with calculation transcending cultural differences. Tsukuyomi acknowledges verification outcome while maintaining assessment caution. She stated, traditional third-person address creating conversation distance despite physical proximity. The 7th convergence approaches with unprecedented variables despite cyclical appearance. Her formal acknowledgement contains subtle inquiry regarding his pay. RSPECTIVE following memory verification, political positioning disguised as ceremonial recognition. Newly integrated understanding allowed appropriate response beyond merely reactive engagement. Variables including deliberately separated lunar aspects operating through distinct manifestations rather than unified representation, Helios observed, demonstrating awareness beyond recently awakened status. An interesting adaptation with significant implications regarding prophecy interpretation. Surprise flickered briefly across perfect features before diplomatic composure reasserted control. Quote, temporal immersion provided comprehensive context rather than merely fragmentary recollection, she noted with increased assessment calculation. Tsukuyomi wonders which interpretation emerges from expanded understanding. The question represented genuine inquiry beneath political maneuvering, lunar aspect seeking information regarding potential solar position before establishing definitive response. Memory verification had revealed historical context surrounding their complicated relationship across multiple cycles, particularly regarding deliberate separation during 5th convergence restructuring. Scientific methodology suggests examining evidence before reaching conclusion, Helios replied thoughtfully. The prophecy developed during 5th convergence when particular relationship Urns demonstrated promising stability metrics during preliminary restructuring events. Whether those specific patterns remain optimal during 7th convergence given deliberately diversified lunar presentation requires careful analysis rather than merely historical repetition. His response acknowledged historical context while maintaining analytical perspective rather than automatically endorsing traditional interpretation, scientific evaluation rather than merely divine traditionalism. Tsukuyomi considered his position with evident reassessment beyond initial skepticism. Interesting perspective from solar manifestation traditionally advocating established methodology, she observed with genuine curiosity beneath formal address. Perhaps prophecy specified this particular vessel for legitimate purpose rather than merely cyclical repetition. Before conversation could develop further, Diana approached with diplomatic timing that suggested deliberate monitoring rather than coincidental arrival. The Council has requested your presence regarding cipher security protocols, she informed Helios, acknowledging Tsukuyomi with respectful but minimal gesture indicating conversation interruption necessity. The Japanese lunar deity accepted procedural requirement with graceful withdrawal, though meaningful glance suggested conversation continuation expectation at appropriate opportunity. Her departure left momentary privacy within public space, relative isolation amid continuing ceremony dissolution. Tsukuyomi rarely initiates direct conversation without specific strategic objective. Diana noted with careful neutrality masking evident concern. Her involvement with prophecy interpretation historically favors separation maintenance rather than functional integration. The observation contained unstated question regarding their interaction content and his expanded understanding following memory verification. Helios considered appropriate disclosure level given complex political environment and his still developing position within divine hierarchy. Memory verification provided significant context regarding prophecy development during 5th convergence, he acknowledged. Prioritizing transparency with clearly established ally, including historical relationship patterns between solar and lunar aspects before deliberate separation implementation. Diana's EXPR. Eshin revealed momentary vulnerability beneath diplomatic composure, personal concern regarding potential perspective change following comprehensive memory restoration. Historical patterns often lack contemporary context. She noted carefully, previous manifestations operated through different priority frameworks than your current integrated approach. The comment contained subtle inquiry rigor. Ding his current position following expanded historical knowledge, personal question beneath professional observation. Helios recognized genuine concern transcending merely political calculation. Integration provides unique advantage my previous manifestations lacked, he assured her, deliberately addressing unstated concern. Scientific methodology emphasizes evidence evaluation within contemporary context rather than merely historical repetition. The prophecy requires fresh interpretation based on current convergence parameters rather than automatically implementing previous cycle patterns. Relief visibly relaxed her posture despite maintained diplomatic composure. The Council awaits your contribution regarding cipher security implementation, she confirmed, returning to professional framework while personal connection remained acknowledged beneath official interaction. As they departed ceremony space toward security consultation, Helios noticed Artemis observing their interactee. On from calculated distance, silver eyes revealing complex assessment beneath carefully neutral expression. Unlike Diana's direct engagement or Tsukuyomi's calculated approach, the lunar prime maintained deliberate separation despite obvious interest in verification outcome and subsequent interactions. The divergent lunar approaches highlighted fundamental challenge facing prophecy implementation. Unified cosmic function currently operating through deliberately separated manifestations with distinct priorities and methodologies. Traditional interpretation assumed singular representative vessel for each cosmic principle, while current reality featured diversified manifestation requiring innovative solution development. Security consultation occurred within specialized facility where divine architecture prioritized practical functionality over ceremonial appearance. Mathematical principles governing protection methodologies manifested through structural representation rather than merely symbolic decoration. Zeus and Athena coordinated discussion with representatives from major pantheons, establishing comprehensive protocols for divine cipher protection during pre-convergence period. Verification confirmation allows implementation of coordinated security systems utilizing authenticated solar essence, Zeus explained, transitioning smoothly from ceremonial recognition to practical application. The solar cipher demonstrates increased stability under legitimate harbinger influence, enabling enhanced protection methodology previously unavailable. Practical discussion focused on technical implementation rather than philosophical implications, energy harmonization, resonance patterns, and interference prevention measures occupying primary attention. Athena contributed special IZED knowledge regarding innovative protection approaches, while Pantheon representatives offered complementary methodologies from diverse traditions. Throughout technical consultation, Helios noted Artemis's continued calculated distance despite her central role regarding lunar cipher security. Unlike other participants who engaged directly through question, suggestion or commentary, she maintained minimal required participation without volunteering additional contribution. The deliberate separation strategy continued beyond verification confirmation despite official recognition establishing his legitimate position. Political statement through behavioral methodology rather than direct declaration. Position maintenance through interaction limitation rather than verbal opposition. As Saku, Reti consultation concluded with implementation framework established, Athena indicated visualization chamber adjacent to main facility. The cosmic nexus map requires authenticated solar essence for complete activation, she explained. Transitioning smoothly between security protocols and navigation requirements. Your verification confirmation enables expanded functionality previously unavailable during pre-authentication period. The specialized chamber featured architectural design emphasizing astronomical representation, physical space reconfigured to demonstrate cosmic relationships through a three-dimensional mapping rather than merely symbolic illustration. At its center floated crystalline sphere containing miniaturized universe representation, galaxies, dimensional boundaries, and energy pathways rendered with mathematical precision beyond conventional visualization technology. The Nexus map tracks divine cipher locations across realms while monitoring void corruption progression through reality architecture. Athena explained, activating initialization sequence through control panel composed of mathematical symbols rather than conventional instrumentation. Authentication allows personal signature recognition enabling enhanced tracking specificity previously unavailable. The practical application provided welcome transition from ceremonial recognition toward functio. Null contribution, scientific methodology applied toward cosmic challenge rather than merely political positioning. Helios approached control interface with professional interest transcending merely divine protocol. Analytical mind engaging with technical requirements rather than positional authority. Authentication required direct essence interaction with specialized interface, solar energy channel. Through precise mathematical pattern matching unique signature characteristics. The process resembled scientific instrumentation calibration despite mystical implementation, technical methodology applied toward spiritual objective. When authentication completed, the Nexus map expanded dramatically, visualization detail increasing exponentially as underlying mathematical model incorporated additional data layers previously inactive. Cosmic architecture appeared with unprecedented clarity, revealing connection patterns, vulnerability points, and energy distribution networks operating across dimensional boundaries. Remarkable resolution improvement, Helios observed with genuine appreciation, scientific assessment overriding divine status consideration. The mathematical model demonstrates fractal relationship patterns operating beyond conventional three-dimensional representation. Authentication provides access to underlying architectural blueprints rather than merely observable manifestation, Athena confirmed. Professional satisfaction evident beneath composed exterior. The map reveals cosmic infrastructure supporting reality maintenance across convergence cycles. The visualization highlighted 12 distinct energy signatures representing divine ciphers scattered across reality architecture, power focuses maintaining structural integrity through specialized function application. Their distribution followed mathematical pattern establishing balanced network rather than merely random positioning, cosmic engineering rather than arbitrary placement. What immediately concerned all present, however, was status indication accompanying each signature representation. 5 ciphers displayed corruption warning, visualization showing void influence having compromised their operational parameters despite maintained physical integrity. The affected artifacts appeared primarily within distant dimensional sectors traditionally supervised by lesser pantheons with limited defense resources. Confirmation of preliminary assessment, Zeus noted grimly. The Void Collective has established control over multiple ciphers ahead of Convergence timeline, creating unprecedented advantage during approaching alignment vulnerability. The visualization provided comprehensive strategic assessment beyond previously available intelligence, corruption progression, targeting methodology, and vulnerability expansion, all rendered with mathematical precision, allowing accurate prediction modeling. Most concerning element appeared within temporal representation, acceleration indicator, suggesting corruption progression operating significantly ahead of anticipated timeline. The convergence approaches more rapidly than astronomical calculation predicted, Athena observed, analyzing temporal indicators with professional concern. Corruption acceleration creates feedback loop affecting fundamental stability parameters across dimensional boundaries. Technical assessment transla TED into strategic implication immediately apparent to all present. Timeline compression requiring accelerated countermeasure implementation rather than methodical preparation. The situation demanded immediate action despite traditionally deliberate divine response protocols. As discussion focused on tactical response requirements, Helios noticed unusual energy pattern within map visualization, TLE connection between solar and lunar ciphers operating independently from conscious direction. The phenomenon matched his earlier observation during experimental synchronization, autonomous communication between artifacts beyond deliberate control. The ciphers actively compensate for corruption progression through enhanced synchronization, he realized, scientific analysis identifying functional adaptation within complex system. They're establishing alternative stability maintenance network compensating for compromised components. The observation directed attention toward central relatio. N-ship within visualization. Gold-silver connection between complementary ciphers demonstrating accelerated synchronization despite physically separated location. Mathematical modeling predicted exponential stability improvement through proximity increase. Theoretical maximum achieved through complete synchronization during convergence culmination. Artemis finally broke calculated silence, her attention focused on technical implication rather than personal complication. The model assumes conventional synchronization methodology rather than innovative alternative, she noted, scientific assess meant temporarily overriding political positioning. Traditional approach through complete union rather than partial harmonization with maintained separation. The comment represented first direct acknowledgement of prophecy implications since verification confirmation, technical observation containing philosophical significance beyond merely practical application. Her willingness to engage directly suggested priority reassessment based on visualization evidence rather than merely positional maintenance. The mathematical model demonstrates optimal configuration while alternative arrangements remain theoretically viable. Athena clarified diplomatically. Efficiency metrics favor traditional methodology though innovation potential remains insufficiently explored due to implementation opportunity limitation. Technical discussion provided neutral framework for addressing fundamentally personal question, scientific methodology creating common ground despite philosophical disagreement. IOS recognized opportunity for constructive engagement beyond political positioning. Scientific approach suggests experimental comparison between traditional and innovative methodologies before reaching implementation conclusion. He proposed, deliberately employing technical framework rather than divine authority, particularly given unprecedented circumstances including deliberately diversify lunar representation operating through distinct manifestations rather than unified vessel. The suggestion acknowledged legitimate concerns while proposing practical solution pathway, scientific methodology applied toward traditionally spiritual question. Artemis studied him with calculating assessment, silver eyes revealing reluctant reconsideration beneath maintained skepticism. Experiment at Ion requires established parameters ensuring proper evaluation metrics beyond merely subjective assessment, she countered, engaging directly with proposed methodology rather than dismissing suggestion entirely. Technical approach rather than traditional interpretation with predetermined outcome expectation. Her response represented significant position evolution, willingness to consider alternative implementation rather than maintaining absolute separation. The shift suggested visualization evidence had impacted risk assessment calculation despite continued philosophical reservation. NA's laboratory provides appropriate testing environment with comprehensive monitoring capabilities, Helios agreed, building upon established connection point rather than addressing underlying philosophical disagreement. Scientific methodology applied toward cosmic challenge despite traditionally spiritual context. The technical framing maintained neutral engagement pathway despite fundamental personal implications, practical problem-solving approach transcending historical complication. Zeus observed their interaction with calculated neutrality, allowing direct negotiation rather than posing hierarchical direction despite clear authority position. Implementation timeline requires immediate initiation given convergence acceleration, he noted practically, providing procedural framework without dictating specific methodology. The Council acknowledges experimentation value while emphasizing practical outcome necessity within compressed schedule requirements. The diplomatic formulation established operational authorization while maintaining decision authority within directly involved parties, administrative support without imposing specific solution pathway. Divine politics, operating through procedural framework rather than direct intervention. As technical discussion expanded to include implementation logistics, Helios noticed Diana observing their interaction with CA. Fully neutral expression masking evident assessment calculation. Her position regarding prophecy interpretation remained officially unspecified despite clear personal perspective, diplomatic neutrally. Tie maintained despite obvious preference. The complex dynamics between three distinct lunar manifestations, Artemis representing traditional Greek aspect, Diana embodying Roman adaptation, and Tsukuyo manifesting Japanese interpretation, created unprecedented variables within prophecy implementation context. Traditional assumption regarding singular cosmic representative encountering fundamental challenge through deliberately diversified manifestation across cultural boundaries, which perhaps explained the prophecy's specifically modern timing, seventh convergence requiring innovative solution beyond traditionally available methodology. Scientific framework providing implementation pathway unavailable during previous cycles when spiritual interpretation dominated cosmic understanding. As consultation concluded with implementation schedule established, participants dispersed toward individual responsibilities with enhanced urgency reflecting compressed timeline understanding. Helios found himself momentarily isolated with Artemis as others departed, unexpected opportunity for direct communication beyond formalized discussion framework. Your verification demonstration proved considerably more interesting than typical returning deity protocol, she observed with calculated neutrality beneath evident assessment. Integration methodology rather than merely essence restoration. The comment represented first direct personal acknowledgement since council introduction, deliberate engagement beyond merely technical discussion. Memory verification had provided comprehensive context regarding their complicated relationship across multiple cycles, particularly fifth convergence events leading toward current separation strategy. Scientific background provides perspective advantage. My previous manifestations apparently lacked, Helios acknowledged carefully. Integration rather than replacement creates opportunity for innovative approach beyond traditional methodology. Artemis studied him with penetrating assessment transcending merely physical observation, divine perception evaluating essence characteristics beyond visible manifestation. Memory verification restored comprehensive understanding rather than merely fragmentary recollection, she noted perceptively. Including historical context regarding complicated interactions across previous cycles. The deliberate reference addressed in spoken question regarding his current perspective following expanded historical knowledge, personal inquiry beneath professional observation. Unlike Diana's concern regarding potential relationship impact, Artemis focused on strategic implications beyond merely emotional consideration. Historical context provides valuable information while contemporary circumstances require fresh evaluation rather than merely pattern repetition, Helios replied thoughtfully. Scientific methodology emphasizes evidence assessment within current parameters rather than automatically implementing previous approaches regardless of contextual evolution. Something resembling reluctant approval flickered across divine features before neutral assessment reasserted dominant expression. An unusually reasonable perspective from solar manifestation traditionally advocating established methodology regardless of circumstance, she observed with dry precision. Perhaps seventh converge. Nth specifically requires innovative approach beyond conventional implementation. The observation contained significant position evolution beneath casual delivery, willingness to consider alternative. Methodology despite maintained philosophical reservation. Visualization evidence had apparently impacted risk assessment beyond merely technical consideration. Science and divinity share fundament. Objective despite methodological differences, Helios noted, building upon established connection point rather than addressing historical complication directly. Understanding underlying principles. Governing reality operation across dimensional boundaries. Artemis considered his perspective with calculated reassessment, silver eyes revealing reluctant reconsideration beneath maintained skepticism. The laboratory experimentation should prove educational regardless of ultimate implementation determination, she concluded with deliberate neutrality masking evident curiosity. Perhaps scientific methodology offers alternative pathway beyond traditionally available options. With that provisional acknowledgement, she departed, silver energy trailing momentarily behind graceful movement E4 dissipating into surrounding atmosphere. The interaction represented significant progression beyond initial opposition despite maintained reservation, willingness to explore alternative rather and automatically rejecting any approach advancing prophecy implementation. As Helios prepared to depart visualization chamber, Diana returned, her timing suggesting deliberate monitoring rather than coincidental arrival. Artemis typically avoids direct communication with solar manifestation regardless of verification status, she observed with careful neutrality masking evident curiosity. Your conversation appeared surprisingly civilized despite historical complications. The comment contained unstated question regarding interaction content and potential relationship implications. Helios cited appropriate disclosure level given complex political environment and Diana's unique position between competing lunar manifestations. Scientific methodology provides neutral framework for addressing fundamentally philosophical disagreement, he explained thoughtfully. Technical approach creating common ground despite historical complication. Diana's expression revealed momentary vulnerability beneath diplomatic composure, personal interest transcending merely political calculation. Artemis has maintained absolute separation from solar essence for 3 complete cycles, she noted with significant understatement. Her willingness to consider experimental approach represents unprecedented position evolution despite continued philosophical reservation. The observation highlight fundamental challenge facing prophecy implementation. Unified cosmic function currently operating through deliberately separated manifestations with distinct priorities and methodologies. Traditional interpretation assumed singular representative vessel for each cosmic principle, while current reality featured diversified manifestation requiring innovative solution development. The visualization on evidence appears to have impacted risk assessment calculation beyond merely technical consideration, Helios acknowledged. Corruption progression operating significantly ahead of anticipated timeline. Creates implementation urgency transcending philosophical preference. Necessity frequently accomplishes what persuasion cannot, Diana agreed with diplomatic precision. Though I suspect your conventional approach contributes significantly to reconsideration possibility beyond merely circumstantial pressure. Before Helios could respond appropriately, reality shuddered around them, subtle vibration passing through divine architecture as interdimensional barrier experienced momentary instability. Warning systems activated throughout visualization chamber, monitoring displays indicating significant corruption surge within previously stable sectors. Breach detection within Eastern Quadrant, Diana reported, accessing defense networks through her communication device with practiced efficiency. Multiple void manifestations attempting synchronized penetration across dimensional boundaries. The attack timing suggested deliberate targeting rather than random manifestation, strategic. Offensive specifically aimed at Olympian complex following verification confirmation. Correlation implied sophisticated intelligence gathering beyond previously demonstrated capability, tactical response to solar authentication rather than merely opportunistic corruption. The verification energy signature provided targeting vector despite protection protocols, Helios realized, scientific YSIS identifying causation pattern within complex system. They tracked authentication resonance through dimensional barriers despite interference countermeasures. Diana confirmed his assessment THR. Our defense network information with grim acknowledgement. Synchronized penetration attempts at precisely calculated intervals matching verification energy pulse frequency, she reported. Significant. TLY more sophisticated targeting methodology than previously encountered manifestation patterns. The implications suggested concerning evolution in void collective strategic capability, adaptive methodology rather than merely increased corruption volume. Previous encounters demonstrated primarily brute force approach through overwhelming manifestation, while current attack employed precision target. ETING based on energy signature analysis. Zeus materialized within the chamber with unprecedented urgency, divine transportation bypassing conventional transition protocols. Security breach confirmé. D within multiple sectors simultaneously, he reported without ceremonial preamble. Coordinated void manifestation demonstrating unprecedented strategic methodology requiring immediate countermeasure implementation. The situation demanded practical response beyond merely theoretical planning, immediate action rather than comprehensive preparation. Helios accessed newly integrated knowledge rigor. Ding solar essence application within defense contexts, scientific methodology combining with divine understanding to identify effective countermeasure approach. Authentication resonance created TAR. Getting opportunity through dimensional barrier penetration, he assessed practically. Reciprocal frequency implementation should disrupt targeting algorithm through false signature multiplication. The technical suggestion represented innovative application beyond traditional divine defense methodology, scientific principles applied toward spiritual challenge. Zeus evaluated proposal with calcula. TED assessment rather than automatic dismissal despite unconventional approach. Implementation requires coordinated essence projection through multiple access points simultaneously, he noted, identifying practical requirement rather than rejecting proposal entirely. Distributed network rather than centralized projection to prevent secondary targeting opportunity. Diana immediately engaged with implementation logistics. Her unique position between pantheons providing coordination advantage beyond merely technical capability. The Amazonian communication network can provide distribution in infrastructure with appropriate modification for divine essence transmission, she suggested. Hybrid implementation combining mortal technology with spiritual methodology. The innovative approach Ched Helios's integration philosophy, complementary systems combining strengths while mitigating individual limitations. Scientific principles applied toward divine challenges while spiritual understand. Ding enhanced technological implementation. I can configure the frequency pattern based on authentication signature analysis, he confirmed, already calculating mathematical relationships required or effective countermeasure implementation. Inverse harmonic sequence creating destructive interference within targeting algorithm while preserving essential communication functionality. Zeus Auto. RISD implementation with decisive efficiency rather than protracted consideration. Practical necessity overriding traditional deliberation given crisis circumstances. Proceed immediately with available resources, he directed. Defense forces will maintain conventional containment while countermeasure implementation progresses. As they departed visualization chamber toward implementation facility, Helios noticed Artemis coordinating separate response team with characteristic efficiency, silver energy manifesting specialized arrows designed specifically for void entity disruption. Unlike previous IOUS encounters where lunar and solar representatives operated through completely separated methodology, current crisis prompted parallel response within complementary framework despite maintained philosophical difference. The coordinated approach represented significant evolution despite continued separation, functional cooperation without requiring complete integration. Perhaps seventh conversion. CE specifically required innovative solution beyond traditionally available methodology, scientific framework providing implementation pathway unavailable during previous cycles when spiritual interpretation dominated cosmic understanding. Chapter 3 End. The End. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.